Okay. Go. There we go. Audio's great. So, that's it. I had a bit of time space in between sorting out my healthcare because, well, I should already have gone back to hospital again. But a week ago, I think it was a week ago, maybe a bit longer, I got fucked over. It was the Saturday, not the Saturday. It's just gone. The one before. I got buggered over, so I'm somewhat technically back, but I'm not actually back. I'm just wagging it a bit, even though I should have already gone back to hospital again. But complicated situation. I ended up on the streets in a different town for the night because I got buggered over. But I thought in that time space, have a look at the video that was made by Alia, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I mostly agree with the video. I just want to add in my own 2 cents because I was sent this by Comrade Net, and he was astounded with the sort of the good line that's coming out on these sort of issues, and I wanted to more compound it in a anti-humanist message. I hope that is an actual Karl Marx message quote. Karl Marx is a Muslim bottom text.
Another episode of Alia Does Anarchy, and today we're going to be talking about Karl Marx's perspective on religion and why I disagree with it. Now, before we critique Marx's perspective on religion, we first need to establish what it is. Now, there's a lot of misrepresentation of Marx's theory on religion, even by Marxists themselves. This is all too common with many different facets of Marxist analysis. You see the greatest exponents of Marx totally vulgarizing his theory and misunderstanding it. So we need to first establish what it is. What is Marx's theory on religion? So we need to start with Ludwig Feuerbach, a young Hegelian German philosopher who was deeply influential to Marx and Engels. So essentially, according to Feuerbach, in his critique of Christianity in particular and religion in general, he saw God as an externalization of man's best attributes: love, compassion, virtue, goodness. Man separated those qualities that were intrinsic to him and put it on this godlike figure of his creation. So essentially, Christianity degraded man. It made man perceive himself to be a sinful, disgusting person, while this creation of his God was great.
Well, I wish I could stick around, but not in a favourable time and place. Yeah, no stress, lad. No stress, lad. What's it? With their view to watch and throw your 10 pennies in. I need to turn my mic down a bit. I'm going into the red. Yeah, lad. What's it? A lot of this is just going to be me throwing the cultural points in anyway.
And wonderful. And essentially, according to Feuerbach, this created an oppressive complex where we were living in a miserable way and devoting ourselves to this deity of our own creation. So Feuerbach's humanism was essentially about man recognizing his very essence, which is godlike in its nature. That's how you negate this hierarchical Christianity and this idea of this divine entity.
But if you've seen almost like the thing that already climbs in is that these humanists, these atheists, they always end up creating their own religiosity in trying to deny religion. Like you know, they will be very Christianly atheist in their retrospect. Because I mean, a lot of people who have moved past these sort of things, in that, if we're going to speak of it in that sense, they normally don't care. So it's not normally because the society has given them like this great, because a lot of them are in absolutely despotic positions. You know, religion is, I'd argue religion isn't really reinforced by misery. You know, bad habits in anything is enforced by misery, but religion is just sort of one aspect of people's lives that can be affected by their misery. You know, I think the thing to look at, and someone get into this though, is that the people who draw up religion more than anyone aren't They aren't the poor. It's not the extremely rich. It's the middle class, the cultural hegemon within society, because they're the most alienated, and they got to supplement their alienation. They're disconnected from their culture, so they have to frame that they have reached higher culture. A lot of people who are atheists, like strictly atheist. Type people get pissy if you don't fucking recognize. A lot of people down there in the poor are like that. They still respect where their culture comes from and that they're part of a greater cultural block that has a semblance of religiosity to it. Those who are Lumpen Irish respect their Catholic and their Druid heritage, for example.
By embracing those qualities of God, according to Feuerbach. And that was primarily love for man. And Marx essentially operated with a Feuerbachian premise that religion was alienating man from his greatest attributes and qualities. However, where he separates from Feuerbach is that he recognizes the material conditions that alienate man from his better essence. Capitalism, feudalism, prior exploitative systems of repression have enabled religion to fester, and the suffering of mankind has led to them worshiping divine entities, because man cannot feel whole in this oppressive system without attachment to this divine entity. That's why it was the opium of the masses. That's why it's this entity that
It's somewhat ignores, though. So, big issue I have with what Marx comes to is Marx seems to very much ignore what religion has tried to build in its efforts, though, what it is sought out. We go as far back to the Ethiopian Catholics, the Oriental Catholics, the people who started Christianity. There's this semblance of seeking this systems, this society that's tribal socialist. It's the intrinsically got a want for a society where everyone is for one another. You see the same with the Irish Catholic, the Celtic Catholics in general, and before then the Celtic Druids. You see this want for this society that is socialistic, and you see the deterioration of it come from those in power that want to abuse it to their own whim. I feel like they just think of religion as this the oppressive elements of religion as just this organic thing that comes from religion itself, when it's more so the oppressive apparatus of class society using that religion to its own means to oppress the society at hand.
that rejuvenates mankind and gives him a sense of purpose. Him, her, there. It's not really.
And I mean, that's the point to take from that as well, is that, like, how can people credence what oppressive figures that utilize religion to their own whim, how can people credit that to the religion itself? And the worst thing is that when a lot of Marxists do this, a lot of these Marxists will they will be selective with how they do this with certain religions. A lot of them will just hate all of them, but some of them will selectively hate certain religions like Christianity, but not others. We're looking at you, the Maoists that go too far with Confucius.
Gendered thing, a sense of purpose in this destructive, alienating, exploitative world, whether it be capitalism where you're essentially commodified, your labor exists to extract surplus value for the wealthy bourgeoisie, whether it be the feudal system where you're essentially just an appendage to the feudal lord, where you own very little and your lives are dependent on very repressive hierarchical structures, whether it be slavery. These structures reinforce man's alienation from his virtuous character and enables the creation of this hierarchy between God and mankind. So Marx recognized Feuerbach's potent analysis of religion, but he laid bare a material foundation to it. And unlike Feuerbach, he recognized that criticism was not sufficient. He recognized that there needs to be a negation of this repressive material order. There needs to be spontaneous, active, revolutionary action. That's why in his thesis on Feuerbach, Marx is clear that Feuerbach's materialism is static. It isn't transformative. It doesn't recognize the material context that produces religion in the first place. And that's why in his last thesis on Feuerbach, he says philosophers have interpreted the world in various ways. Our job is to change it. Marx understood that religion is not abstract from other repressive systems. In fact, religion can only be negated once you tackle these repressive structures like capitalism that reinforce religion, or patriarchy that reinforce religious dogma. So here is a quote from Marx's critique of Hegel's philosophy of right, which brilliantly highlights Marx's theory on the topic of religion. So Marx says in his critique of Hegel's philosophy of right, quote, religious distress is at the same time the expression of real distress and the protest against real distress. Religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature, the heart of a heartless world, just as it is the spirit of a spiritless situation. It is the opium of the people.
I always fuck this up. There we go. I'm used to putting them in the top left for when I'm watching it on my own. There we go.
The abolition of religion as the illusory happiness of the people is required for their real happiness. The demand to give up the illusions about its condition is the demand to give up a condition that needs illusions. The criticism of religion is therefore, in embryo, the criticism.
I mean, the issue that comes with a lot of these Marxian thinkers is that religion itself doesn't have to be illusion or delusion. I find this very insultative mannerisms to look at it. As he even said himself, not used to the streaming, but you know, our learning of science, our learning of universe never disproves religion. All it does is expands the horizon of what we think of the universe, what we think of reality, what we think has come to exist. It shows that we're not the center of everything and we're not the most important creation to ever exist. Yeah, sure. But, fucking hell, the whole mic thing went red then. But, we are when we learn these new expansions on science and the universe and everything else, all it does is make the world larger. It doesn't stop anyone from believing in the God. All it shows is that their God has made a vast amount more than just one planet, one solar system, one sun. No, there's billions of stars. Actually, our sun isn't even the biggest star out there. It's kind of puny for a star compared to most. Like, what we learn the universe is a lot more expansive. It doesn't end up disproving religion. What ends up being the people who detract from religion are the most alienated people in society, the labor aristocracy. And that's why you get two sides of the labor aristocracy. The people who are completely turned off, or you get the people who go in this wacko, you see it in America a lot, but we get it over here too, the wacko evangelical types who are so detached from reality that they have to go full wacko with their religion. They're caught up in the humanistic elements that exist within religious structures since the 1800s. I mean, we've seen the massive changes that have happened in Christianity since the 1500s, but the main alteration with religion to be modernized for imperialism occurred in the 1800s, where it was restructured to fit in with the development humanism had on the old school black and white disparity within race. You can't really talk about the deterioration of religion for imperialism without talking how it has been related to the use for racism. I mean, the black and white shit come from the manipulation of purity and heathenous rhetoric to profligate Irish, Italian, Sicilian, African, Arabian, and many other people as less than human, as impure. And that's one of the big follies people don't understand when humanism is humanism for who is human when people talk humanism, and they see only a specific sect of civilized people to be human.
Of the veil of Wu, the halo of which is religion. Criticism has plucked the imaginary flowers from the chain, not so that man will wear the chain without any fantasy, consolation, but so that he will shake off the chain and cull the living flower. So Marx recognized, and by the way, this is a book that I'm not very fond of so far. The quote is from God is Not Great by Christopher Hitchens, and I'll get to my problem with Hitchens and the New Atheist in subsequent parts of this video. But what the quote is essentially highlighting is the fact that we can't merely engage in criticism. You know, you're just going to be plucking the flowers off the chains. Absolutely not. That would be the end result of Feuerbach's analysis, simply plucking flowers off of chains, because it's not acknowledging the material foundations that lay bare religious exploitation in the first place. What legitimizes the papacy? What legitimizes these various...
That's what I gotta say as well. I like the use of language there, because it's not religion itself that's the problem. It's the exploitation of religion, the use of it as a tool of power and control. I mean, he had to shoot off, but our brother who lives in Lebanon himself commented earlier. I mean, he would have a lot to say about the way religion is manipulated and use of power. Lebanon, like a lot of countries that have been affected by British and French and European in general colonialism in the Middle East, have had to deal with this manipulation of their religion by superpowers and by those willing to sell out their people to superpowers. There is certainly an element of exploitation that goes on there, but it's certainly not the fault of religion itself, like a lot of these thinkers like to think. They just think religion is the opium of the masses, and they're completely wrong. No. And anything can be an opiate for the masses if you're trying to buy them off. And I'd argue that consumerism is the much larger opiate of the masses than anything else. When we're looking at the plight of the first world, and the people of the third world, well, they're rising up in struggle. Then they ain't taking the opium. They ain't taking their shit sitting down. Is the way the saying would go. They ain't taking their shit sitting down.
Religious institutions to Marx is these poor material conditions that have relegated man to this position in the first place. It's very comparable to Bakunin's analysis in God and the State, where he essentially compares the religious process to drinking alcohol, where you're trying to mitigate this pain that is a part of your living experience. This endless toiling to reinforce the exploitation of the capitalist class, where your surplus value is being extracted to put you in the condition of a miserable laborer who can barely afford basic needs and necessities, let alone luxuries, which makes you separate from your own labor because it's alien to you. It confronts you in a negative way, because the more you labor, the more you toil, the more you reinforce your oppression, the more you embolden your oppressor. So Marx is recognizing here the necessity to deal with the conditions that reinforce religion. And he's recognizing the necessity to go beyond just criticism. And he understands that religion won't be banned through state institutions like, the Soviet Union's repression of religious institutions. It's done through the natural conditions of transforming our day-to-day life. Now, here's my criticism of this book I just quoted, God is Not Great by Christopher Hitchens, and the New Atheist movement in general. Marx has a brilliant criticism of the new atheists like Christopher Hitchens, Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, Daniel Dennett. And this criticism is the same that he applied to Feuerbach. These new atheists are so obsessed with critical thinking and trying to debunk religion with their own argumentation instead of focusing on the real, most potent way to negate religion by fighting against what produces this false consciousness in the first place, which is capitalism. Capitalism has reinforced this superstructure to rationalize the current relations of production. Religion and religious hierarchy and ecclesiastical institutions form their basis on the oppression of the masses. The masses.
This is a point that doesn't go with enough explanation, though. People think this is applied to the religions themselves. If you look to the history of any religion, you'll see that religion rises in reaction to the ruling class, not from the ruling class. Look to any part of history. I mean, what was it that Christianity rose on? Fuck off with your Roman mercantilism. That was the rise of Christianity. Jesus Christ was a figure of the people, and it was fuck off with your Roman mercantilism. What was the rise of Islam predicated on? Fuck off meddling with the Fertile Crescent foreign powers. We are united. We are standing against your shit. Any look through history. The Hindi people rose up because of the repressive state of India. You can look to the Buddhists rising up because of the contradictions that were occurring in China during the era of warlord rampage. You go all throughout any part of history and you'll find that religion typically will rise up because of oppression to find a way out of it. It's never just we're going to stabilize and deal with it. These movements normally come at a push to stand. Where things have changed, though, is when they're adopted and taken on. Look at what happened with Rome. Rome took Christianity, manipulated the scriptures, and tried to use it to defend its empire. And that Romanized Christianity has been the model for imperialist entities and colonial entities trying to replicate Rome. I mean, if you look through the last bit of history, I mean, you'll see a lot of Kaiserists who will just cite the fall of Rome as the setback in history. Now, what was the setback was people trying to replicate Rome after Rome fell. That's what set back. No one could ever do any development and ever reach any technological capacity building forward when they're being pillaged all the time. The pillaging wasn't helping technological development. Why do you think they fucking call it the Dark Ages? It's not because what people believe. They'd say, oh, the church was stuff. No, the church was the thing that was pushing science forward. The reason they call it the Dark Ages is because pretty much every fucking decade there was a genocide, a massacre, something going on. There was war and war and war. And why? Because there were entities like the Normans, different certain tribes, Germanic tribes of the Anglo and the Saxons. Although speaking with an Irish Lumpen comrade, we come to the agreement that given that it was way later into the it took there was like 2 or 3 centuries before the Saxons and the Celts actually clashed with each other, that it was likely Norman and Romanic influence on the Saxons that caused the skirmishes of the 7th century and what might eventually progressed onwards into the 13th century when the English Celts had been obliterated. You also have the Normans, you have the Vikings, you have the Germanic tribes, you have the Frankish tribes. All these different European groups were adopting Romanism. I mean, you saw the Roman Catholics of the Saxons force the Celtic Catholicism out as much as they ever could anywhere that they could. It's one of the things I say when we're talking on the realm of Catholicism is the Celtic and Oriental Catholicism needs to be restored into strength. Eastern Catholicism is much better than Western Catholicism, but it's still not as good as Oriental Catholicism. You know, your Ethiopian, your Middle Eastern, and your Fertile Crescent, and your Asian Catholicism. Actually, when I was on the streets just over a week ago, when I fucked up with the hospital, when I was at the train station, I actually met a Pakistani Catholic while I was at the train station. Look at how English racism has made us make a new word. Like, Pakistani isn't actually a proper term, but because of our racist use of the word Paki, the word Paki has become a buzzword, but I was taught this by a teacher of mine. It's actually the sensical term, because otherwise we're calling them we're putting the word state in their name. You don't call them Afghanistani, you call them an Afghani. Funny little bit of British trivia. I can't even remember what spurred the teacher on for saying it. I think someone was being grassed on for using the word. And this was the one time a teacher actually asked for context rather than being a cunt. Yeah, no, I was speaking with a geezer about a lot of different interesting things regarding the contradictions of the Catholic order, and he was in very much agreement with me on it. And I even spoke up things that he didn't know himself. But religion is not in and of itself a conferrer or a stabilizer of the capitalist system. It's the way culture in general is manipulated. Religion is no more special than any other part of culture that gets manipulated like that. Look at America. A lot of America's manipulation doesn't come from the fact that it's a majority Christian country. They use that a lot, but there's a lot of cultural things, all of which are not unique to America. As much as America wants to think they're unique, just a bunch of fucking funny Europeans that like to do genocide a little more than everyone else. Um, you know, and it's only slightly more because we're just as fucking genocidal as the Yanks. We like to dispel ourselves from them, but we're not really much different. But yeah, there's plenty bits of their culture that is not in any way invoking Christianity or in any way invoking religion that is utilized in the cultural hegemony of control. And that comes from the labor aristocracy. The labor aristocracy, and I mean the actual core center and upper sections of this very fucking disgracefully large middle class that we have in the first world. This core block of society that controls the cultural hegemony, they use whatever they can to control society. If you have more of the labor aristocracy and still the religion, they'll use it to their poignance of control. If they fall out of favor with it, they will try to push within society atheism on as many people as they can, and they will bastardize anyone who is not an atheist as a fundamentalist. I'm not even a very religious person. I may be Catholic, but it's more of a semblance of my culture than anything else. I'd argue that I'm agnostic. I see the God as the spirit of man. So what I find quite funny is that, and people who still believe him as an actual entity still follow this line of thought anyway. He's representative of the spirit of man. So the way that these humanists like to make it out that he's like an opposing force and that we're everything that's bad and everything that's, they don't understand. They ain't got a clue. It was supposed to be in tune and connected to the point where we may as well be the thing itself if we're all conglomerated together. I mean, and this is something that very communalizes some of the most drastically different religions ever, and it was actually my Arab friend who sort of helped expand my thought on this, because here's the thing. If the omnipotent omnipresence, so if we're to look at being an embodiment of man, but not just man, it's also an embodiment of physical reality around us. I guess that's the one where you could say there's a separation between us and God, but if you believe that, then you believe there's a separation between man and material, and you are being the anti-materialist motherfucker. I will defend religion and call you anti-materialist. So here we go. But no, it's an embodiment of reality as itself around us, and the spirit of man. Well, that's you look to, let's say we look to Druidism and we look to native culture on the Turtle Island and places like this. The earth is the god. I feel a bit insulting to use the word god like that, because I know that the deity is not really the way that they would label it, but the god, it's the earth itself. That's not really any different to Abrahamic faith. I mean, there may be some people who are cursing me and saying, yeah, it fucking is, but if you really deep down and think of it, fucking isn't. I mean, for someone to have such the power that they can manipulate I agree with a lot of the Jewish sentiment that it probably took billions of years, the 7 days, and that the 7 days is just a humanized expression that helps us learn a philosophical outlook from the creation story. For someone to have that semblance of power, they're likely an embodiment of reality itself, which means that they're an embodiment of the earth itself. It makes absolute sense when you look at Jewish, Catholic specifically, because the Protestants are a bunch of lazy fuckers, and Islam, the Abrahamic faith, but not the Protestants, because they don't fucking follow this for some reason, because they're a bunch of fucking slobs. But the idea that you got to work to improve the world, and that there's a semblance of suffering to go through in life to better push reality forward, the importance of struggle, to put it into modern context, is an intrinsic part of these religions, and it's an intrinsic importance in the way in which that they look at the world as an important part of the omnipotent structure of their Lord. Like the land that they sit upon is a part of His being, just as the skin that they wear on them and the soul and spirit they have in their shoulders. And that's why there's a lot of room in a lot of these spaces for people who are still agnostic, because as far as they see people who are agnostic like myself, they just think we're a bit confused, but otherwise have things pretty much correct. So that's why there's a little more going on, and that there's not this like fundamentalist dominance. Fundamentalism exists in all religion. It is not the dominant force by any means. Even in the most struggling and dying of times, I mean, being like when we look to the third world, there's a lot of people who are radical and religious. Not all of them are fundamental. There are a lot of people who go to fundamentalism at a point of struggle when they're being bombed to shit, and all they got is to hold on to is their culture. But you'll find that it's not as much as your white brain is gonna think. People get white brain when they start thinking about these things. They think that everyone is just at a point when war hits them, they start going all fundamental. No, they may be radical. They may be like very expressive and very defensive of their culture in this point of radical. They may not move their culture very far because of them being in a point where it's very hard to move it anywhere at the moment. But that doesn't mean that they've turned into some fundamental wacko. That means that there's someone who are dying for struggle. They're fighting for their people, and they're pushing hard, and they're using what it is that they can to keep themselves humane, because war drives both sides into horrible places when you're struggling all this time. But the difference is, when someone is the victim, is they have much more of a drive, much more of a conviction to keep themselves pure, to keep themselves strong, to not be poisoned by something that was thrown down onto them. And people need to not mistake people who are in diehard struggle for people who are just fundamentalists, because I find it an absolutely insanely disrespectful way in which to apply oneself to such a situation.
Are inculcated into this idea that they're weak, that they can only be prosperous in heaven, that their life should be devoted to worship rather than active action against the systems of oppression. Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens to a lesser extent, they are liberals. They want to reinforce the capitalistic order that enables religion in the...
Well, I mean, you just pointed out the projection. Like that they're quite literally projecting. Oh, they just want to get people in line with the system. Meanwhile, in the Legion of Doom, it's these dickheads want to reinforce the system themselves. So whom is trying to be the opiate of the masses? The new atheists or the religious people that in their lines say that struggle is an intrinsic part of life. And I mean, I guess this really, if BRB is listening, we have to do a discussion on what jihad and other stuff like that means, and the importance of these sort of progressive pushes and changes that religion seeks out in a lot of situations, because these new atheists have no idea what they're talking about. They're coming from such a fucking first worldist labor aristocratic perspective, where they're boxed in. They've got this edgelord, I've been persecuted by American Christianity perspective that really ends up driving people's ideas into the ground when they think about religion. Weirdly enough, especially when they try and think about Abrahamic religion, you would think with their experience that would be easy for them to criticize with their fucking big brain IQ, but fucking hell, these fuckers just throw the same fucking shit for Sundays.
First place. So in a sense, Marx has a brilliant criticism of these types of new atheists, because all they want to talk about is, formal logic, the watchmaker fallacy, the idea of, going in the debate stage to argue with these various theists. Now, they do a good job of that, but do you really think the new atheists have
No, they don't.
significantly changed the dialogue and the discourse on religion? No, the primary factor that is producing this alienation from religion in our current order is social progressivism, it's economic and technological development, it's better living conditions. That is the primary factor that has mitigated the issue of fundamentalism. That's why.
Has it though, really? Think about the Christian fundamentalism that happens in America. A lot of it comes from the labor aristocracy. They're the main people that encompass the KKK. And then you look to the Fertile Crusade, where you'll have Muslims, Jews, and Christians stand together against imperialism. You'll have Pan-Arab struggle. You have all these people coming together. You come to the technologically advanced first world. Hey, good day, Rob. It's good to see you. This technologically advanced first world has not really produced a destruction of fundamentalism, in my opinion. I think that what it comes to is religion has always evolved and adapted through culture as it's developed on. Ask any religion, they'll tell you that, as long as they're speaking honestly, and they themselves have read their own books, because Revelations has different points to it than what James might have and what Paul might have, and all these other different segments of the Bible. You go as far back as Exodus, and you've got different statements coming out there that are certainly relevant to the time comparative to the time of Jesus. You're talking fucking, could say hundreds to maybe even thousands of years between some of these works. So there's definitely an evolution of culture within all these religions over time, especially considering so many of them have stayed with us. Think about Druidism. Druidism's the oldest. It's got different names in different cultures, but I guess you could call it, like, I know pagan is a slur word. I do apologize, but pagan naturalism. It's the oldest religion of all time, and it still exists today. It's evolved in its expansion of understanding, especially with our greater understanding of us having a universe to think about, not just a planet and a solar system, or just a planet and a sun, like a lot of us thought for a long time. You see these evolutions and adaptations. Why are we not seeing that so much today? Well, because imperialism causes assimilative cultural contradictions. We detach from our cultural normality. We disconnect from our understanding of tribe, the original form of nation. We formalize into this almost like cultural black hole, where we are dissolving away. We're dissolving away our own connection to our own intrinsic tribal culture, our own national heritage, and assimilating the cultures of the world. We're destroying native cultures in many places, from the Fertile Crescent to the Americas to to Africa, and we steal and adopt and take, and we assimilate it into this conglomerative block of culture. And when we're doing actions like that, our own intrinsic culture we disconnect from. It becomes into this plastic, sellout, marketized, crappy plastic formalization of what it was once before. And the importance of it doesn't mean anything to the cultural hegemony within society, the labor aristocracy, because their focus is the driving force for imperialism and them indulging in whatever cultures they can steal from the world. Because if that struggle wasn't the contradiction at hand, the current issue that they were facing in place, all these cultures around the world and within our own nations would be developing forward. Because, I mean, so many people can easily look and point and look to stagnations that have happened in religion around the world, but it's happened here too. It's not happening around the world because they've chose to do so. It's happening around the world because our nations have chose to do so. And they have not chosen to do so because technology has brought us away or progressivism has brought us away, because religion is a philosophical and cultural phenomenon. It can push progressivism itself, no different to anything else, especially when you look to people like Connolly, who brought the dialectical and advanced way to push religion forward with the scientific method. um the society, the system, the cultural phenomena at hand utilizes religion on an oppressive basis. If it cannot oppress the masses with religion, it will throw it away. But they will manipulate and mess with the cultural phenomena of other religion around the world. They will assimilate and destroy whatever they can. I mean, one of the most simple assimilative things you will see within first world society that does get projected down through the cultural hegemony into society, that, they're the ones who control the medium and the media and the information of which people understand and know of the society around them at hand. They're the people who progenitize this idea of Arab and Islam being equatable, and that a Muslim is a type, is a specific race of people, not a block of the Abrahamic faith. The cultural hegemon of first world Christianity, if I'm ever to fucking use that word to describe it, they're the ones who progenitize this idea that that Islam believes in a different God, and that Islam believes that Christianity is some of some false god, that Islam thinks that, and that absolutely untrue. Abrahamic faith, the Abrahamic faith is they all understand that they all believe in the same God. I mean, there may be some dickheads who fucking want to fight it out, but yeah, conglomeratively, they understand that they all believe in the same God, and fucking Christians that know what they're fucking talking about will understand that Islam basically corrected a lot of the issues of Christianity. Take notes. Turn to page 452 of the Quran. Sorry. But no, there is a point in the video back up somewhere that I mentioned about UBRB, to talk about the importance of jihad and the other phenomena similar to jihad that exist within cultural blocks of well, not just religion but society itself, and how this really dispels this idea that a lot of these people have, that religion is used to just keep the current society in in its oppressive format, and has no means for pushing against that. When I'd argue that I think jihad is a very blatant one that really shows that religion has religion or religiosity, being a cultural mechanism of society, does have mechanisms of which are centered around organizing struggle. I think he may have died.
Prosperous countries like Norway and I guess Sweden to a lesser extent and Finland are seeing unprecedented levels of irreligiosity because their material conditions are being taken care of in a way that it hasn't prior and in the past. That's partially why the Soviet Union saw a degree of irreligiosity. It's not just because of the dialectical materialist theory.
I'd argue that, well, the Soviet Union is actually a bit of a complicated one, because, I mean, when you ban religion, it kind of looks like a lot of people have dropped religion, but if you actually look to a lot of interviews around the Soviet Union, around the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, there were loads of people who were still Christian, and then of other religious practices. But let's look at like Norway, Sweden, but it's alienation. Like, sure, religion might drop religion might go up. There's nothing to state that technology or anything like that is going to drop religion. These people are alienated. They're disconnected from their culture. And this alienation has actually driven up a lot of people in these nations, in these isolated aristocratic positions, to take on fascist Nordist, which is what fascism based its what Hitlerism, Nazism based its Aryan race thing off. The Nords were the cream of the crop, as I imagine Hitler would put it. You see a rise of this Nordicist formalization of what's it? What's the fucking of what's their fucking form of druidism called? I can never remember the name of it. Shit. Fucking religions. There's fucking too many of them. Anyone got an encyclopedia with the fucking list? Well, whatever the fucking maybe. Wagwan. What was the form of druidism in the Scandinavian regions called? Norse. That's it. Yeah, it's my name. Don't wear it out. Mick Stockley. He has the encyclopedia. There's only like 7 in print. Well, I mean, while we're in a positive space, for those that want to look into the religiosity of and cultural background of Christianity, especially those of you who already are Christians yourself, stop going to Paul, go to James. I mean, you should read all of it, but Paul don't know shit compared to James. Paul's some silly little Greek fucker. Go to James. I mean, the Greeks are still the ones who hold the hegemon compared to the Romans when it comes to what is to be said in Christian Bible. The language of the Bible is Greek, Ethiopian, and Assyrian. But it's you got to go to James. Fuck off with the Paul shit. But yeah, there's a rise of this Nordist, Norse in these Scandinavian countries that rises in the middle class. So there's not then I would not use Scandinavia as a great example of when society moves forward, people will drop religion, because if you actually look deeper into the contradictions of Scandinavian society, you'll find that a mass amount of people are alienated and driven down to the ground, called conservatism without requirements, revolted against the idea of fear. That's a really catchy title. Oh, conversation. I read that wrong. Conversation without requirements. My bad. But no, it'd be really interesting to have a discussion on sort of like the historical and obviously current day relevance of things like jihad to the importance of struggle within religions. Wow. It's just troubling word with all the translatorial shit that we gotta bloody deal with. But no, because I feel like one of the things that's always missing from people's analysis when they always do this, where it's like, oh well, religion is a reinforcer of the current state of hand. It's like, well, mechanisms. Jihad's the one that I can find easy to remember. I don't know what fucking, I don't know what the fuck Christianity has, but there are mechanisms that do exist within religion for struggle to push against oppressive societies, oppressive systems within society, and oppressive societies that exist. I mean, if we look at both Christianity and Islam, they both rose up in contradiction to the current society at hand. Especially the one I understand with Christianity, because Christianity rose up from the Ethiopians, who were some of the first people to hear Christ speak, and become followers of Christ as soon as they heard words of his words fly out of his mouth, and fell straight behind his "fuck off Rome with your mercantilism." I imagine he said it with much nicer words, but fuck off with your mercantilism. She supports neutral Carter, solidarity to her. Respect, lad, respect. Another is Islam and Christianity, between the idea of fight and the momentum of reapproachment. Sayed Fudla, fucking hell, it's hard word to pronounce. Fadl Allah's quotes regarding Muslim Christians rapprochement. You know, the problem is with that, I imagine that that's one of those situations where to pronounce that D and that L together, you've got to somewhat roll your tongue, and I can't do that for shit. The fucking, what's it? No, like the Nordic countries are not really the best example of fine society pushing things forward. I mean, these countries are seen as like the happiest nations in Europe, but actually you'll find that they have some of the highest suicide rates in Europe. Denmark has a higher suicide rate than both Britain and the DPRK. I think it has a fucking higher suicide rate than Lebanon as well. I think Lebanon was actually really, really low when I remember looking at it. Lebanon is depressing, but you got a lower suicide rate than Britain. And you know what? One of the things that would apply to that is that there's a lot of people that have connections with their. I don't think it's just because funerals are expensive. A lot of people have more of a connection to their culture in the third world. When people in the first world, they're some of the most suicidal people aren't in the worst of material conditions. Some of them are just really, really alienated and messed up in the head because of how jarring society is. The thing that I always play out towards, hearts out to Hezbollah. The things I always play out, shit, I can't remember what I was gonna say then. I can't come to think of what I was gonna say. But oh yeah, that's it. The thing I always play out for people to keep in mind is that I don't know how far this projects to the third world because I don't live there. I don't have the experience. But in the first world, and you know, given that wealth disparity is a massive important part to this, I imagine that if this is a problem in the third world, it is a massively lesser issue. In the first world, the labor aristocracy are fucking insane. Like, even the most nicest of people, they're messed in the brain. They live in a society that is not realistic. The world around them is not realistic. You know, what is a problem in life to them is not the problem in life for people who live outside the realms of capitalist realism. So these people, the real world to them is a fucking drastic thing. You know, like when we can look up and we see the drastic, mad, different life that these people have that just seems so bonkers. Well, that's the same way they look at us, except they look at us worse because they ain't got. They're looking at us without being grounded at all, and like my brother in the first world said, in the third world said, they're too busy trying to survive. It was one of the things that, because I mean, Baby's a great thing. to come out. And this is one of the things I pointed out to him when I discussed with him, is that, you know, he's not in the worst position that you could be in the third world. Like, he's in a middle class position. Yeah, he goes through struggle that some people in the working class don't even go through. A majority of the working class, don't go through in the first world. Hakim is another person as well, actually, that I know is another person who's in the third world and is a labor aristocrat. And it's the same with him. Is his family still have to go through things that a lot of people in the first world working class don't have to go through. And I always try and point it out to them, because these two aristocrats are some of the most humile aristocrats you'll ever meet, because they're the type of people that they understand they have to take a step back, and then they take too much of a step back, and then you have to be like, it's good for you to take a step back because there are people in your own country that you don't have to go through the same struggle as. But you don't have to take that much of a step back, because, I mean, these two go through mass amount of struggle compared to a lot of first world people that they don't have to go through. And one of the things that really helped me learn to that was that a lot of the way that they live and the way that they were brought up reminded me of the way I was brought up. They've got a very working class element to the way that they live. And that's why I say that, like, you know, for how much corruption that can exist in the labor aristocracy in any means in any society, because of them being a product of imperialist meddling in society, the third world labor aristocracy has just got a greater sense of empathy, understanding, and experience compared to the first world labor aristocracy. The first world labor aristocracy are the main dominant force of the military-industrial complex. And actually something that is alluded to towards the end of this, that's actually one of the main things that drove me to want to have to discuss about this video as well, is that the bourgeoisie aren't the guys who control culture in society. They don't give a shit. Culture's initially they didn't really give a shit, and now they're so fucking big. Culture is just something that they can't even fucking put their mind to. They have to go through shit tons of psychological studies to even fucking think they have somewhat of an idea of how people operate and people think, because they don't know how to be people anymore. Have you ever watched Bill Gates speak in an interview? The guy is a fucking zombie. The third world is in a class of its own, the global proletariat. Or you flatter me, I think that's the word. Yeah, you got your wording right there, Hakeem. What's it? Net's balling it. With the fiery things. However, our aristocracy is to be burned. Look, see, I love PRB because he's not only a humile aristocrat, he is a radically humile aristocrat. We shall deal with them with fire. Let's continue with this video, because we're having a great conversation, but this video is also having a great conversation. Let's wagon with the one.
I was being promulgated by the state apparatus and the Bolshevik party. It was also because many of their material conditions were tended to in a way that the Tsarist regime failed in. And so, you know, it's essentially a reinforcing cycle. The Tsarist regime, you know, engages in oppression, exploits the peasants, exploits the workers, forces them to toil, doesn't give them the benefits that they need to survive, and thus
not just Lebanon, Arabia rising. Get out the settlers and freedom in the Fertile Crescent.
Us religion, essentially fundamentalist strains of reactionary religion fester, being reinforced by those material conditions. That being said, here's where I diverge from Marx, and here's where the fundamental critique of his perspective begins.
Oh, ML's pressed the dislike button now. They said they're going to divulge from Marx.
Yes. And this critique also applies to Mikhail Bakunin, the anarchist theorist. Now, you can mitigate the conditions that produce religion and a belief in God, but you cannot eliminate it. It cannot wither away. Here's what I mean. So I'm sure that many people, you know, if you expanded access to healthcare, if you gave their children proper education, if you made them less miserable in a concrete way in this real world, I'm sure that some levels of religiosity would dwindle. I'm sure that faith in God would be lessened to some extent.
why though? Like, like that's like saying, oh, well, if they build the pyramids, well, people of faith in God would drop. If they managed to siphon water off from the river to expand the development of crops, that would drop the belief in God. As if building the Eiffel Tower, building the Empire State Building would have dropped people's faith in God. No, do you know what people said when they built this? Look at what God given give us this earth can make us do, make us build, make us expand ourselves. So I disagree that this would ever drop people's faith. Some people may choose to go a different way, but religiosity is not just religiosity is not merely someone's belief in God or not. What religiosity is it's a component of culture that whether you're an atheist or whether you're a theist, you are following a line of that's a core intrinsic part of our cultural blocks. I mean, you'll see a lot of non-Christians from Christian nations behaving like Christians because that's a part of their core cultural phenomenon. The only thing that's going to make that end up dwindling is if the core cultural phenomena around it changes. Yeah, religiosity is a matter of orientation. 30,000 mosques and bigger development than Italy. Nasser, he developed Egypt and prospered Islam, exactly. But no, do you know what the thing is so with Jamal Abdul Nasser, you'll get a lot of people who support him, but they think that he actually dwindled Islam and brought atheism out in the nation and stuff like that. And that's when you know that they don't know anything about Nasser. They just know that he improved material conditions in the region. And it's like, well, you don't even know the fucking butter and the biscuit. And Abdul Nasser was a fucking was a Muslim. Abdul Nasser, he said the name right. He's terrorizing me. But Abdul Nasser, pushed forward, um, he pushed forward Islam in the nation. He also pushed forward Christianity and Judaism. I mean, me and that was actually talking the other day about how Nasser was somewhat like for someone who protected the Jewish population of Egypt used to make the mistake of then also calling what fucking Israel was doing Jewish as well. And it's like, he knows it's not just a purely Jewish thing, but he's doing the thing. It must be like a trigger thing with you guys over there. But yeah, I know she does, but I think it's somewhat important to see that there is a problematic nature to the way in which that this idea of technology and of development in society being what drives people away from these things. What actually drives people away from these things is the society of misery that doesn't seem solvable within the realms of the culture they find out. It's actually the misery and the alienation in society that's driven people away from these things. Now, people will go either way when society pushes forward, sure, but I doubt that there's going to be this um, aggressive atheism that we see in the first world today, where they encroach on people's religion all the time. But yeah, I'd be careful with digital Bible because I imagine it ended up being the Roman version. Um, Net knows a good way, a good version to read when it comes to the Bible. I do want to read the Quran as well at some point. I want to read the rest of the Bible, and I want to read the Quran because even though I'm agnostic, I think it would be important to understand these cultural phenomena and these blocks and have this wide veil of understanding. I mean, Kwame Ture was not a religious man and still went through reading the lot, and he read the Greco version of Christianity because my man knows all this shit. I mean, a lot of the things that I'll tell you about Ethiopians' importance to Christianity and all these other things like that have come from the mouth of Kwame Ture himself. An absolute inspiration and a person I see as the most important revolutionary of our age. I'll say that, like from the first world perspective. I mean, of course, but even in the third world, I mean, think about what he did for the Pan African movement, the party of the All African People's Party. You know, he massively expanded the narrative, and he always spoke truth to things. I mean, a lot of the people who will criticize him from the sloppy mouth of fucking what's his name? Fucking shit! I'm having a name memory problem. Of the squabbles that happened with the Panthers and Kwame. Kwame has always spoke true on the Panthers' history as a big supporter of the Black Liberation Army, and the amazing work that the Black Liberation Army continued to do with their what was the name of the of Shakir, the leadership, funnily enough relative of Tupac. Dr. Weisfeld knew Kwame. That's a very good thing to point out there. Yep. And Kwame, I do believe, had met Abdel Nasser before, if I remember rightly. Because he went around the world and spoke with all sorts of third world leaders, and I do believe he did go and speak with Abdel Nasser. I know he spoke with Ho Chi Minh, which, there's not many communists that you could point to and go, yeah, he sat down and spoke with Ho Chi fucking Minh. Both Kwame and Dr. Weisfeld knew Gaddafi. Yep, very good thing to lay down there. But Nasser is a very good person to look at into this. Nasser massively improved the conditions of Egypt. You didn't see people dropping Islam anytime soon there. You saw an embodiment of Islam, Judaism, and Christianity in the region. Actually, one thing that a friend of mine is already watching this at the moment and has already alluded to, BRB, is that we discussed at some point, is Nasser's rhetoric around what he saw as the importance of Egypt, and that is being Arab, being Islamic, and being African. So even Nasser had an understanding of the importance of Pan-Africanism as well as Pan-Arabism. And yes, as a good friend is putting in the chat, Nasser was a real patriot. When the PSFM are looking at people like Nasser, Gaddafi, and Chavez. Chavez has a good line on culture, and so does Gaddafi. But when it comes to the essence of patriotism, they look to Nasser. And while there are criticisms that PSFM have on some of the economics of Nasser, they see a Nasser as the best model on the socioeconomic front as well out of these several leaders. Nasser spoke a lot about Africa, as BRB is playing out there, and against imperialism. Well, Nasser was a very terrifying voice to the imperialists. And not only did he say a lot of fucking good shit, he did it looking like a fucking G. No one pulls off the wearing shades like Nasser does. Not even the Kims. The Kims don't even put it off. Or you Kim Jong Il simps, get out. Nasser is the fucking G. He decried the assassination of the Prime Minister of the Congo and took care of his family. They never met. Oh, that's unfortunate. Because, they'd have got along like a house on fire. But, neither, yeah, no. He was bombarded in America. He's bombarded in America and Europe. I mean, this brought scary envisionment to the French, because you then had the constant push of struggle. Pan-Arab struggle really scared the French because of their occupation of what is it? Algeria and other nations like that. And Pan-Africanism in general scared the French, and also because it united the struggle between the Arab and what parts of Africa can be distinctly Arab, and what part of Africa, I mean, it sounds weird to say it like that because I know that Africa is not really distinctly separated on these lines. You can't really turn around and draw a line of this is Arab Africa and this is Africa. They're all just Africa, but you know what I mean? Like, because of the way imperialism has broken up these different sections of Africa along these arbitrary lines of separation. Um, People like NASA who bring together Pan Arabism with Pan Africanism, that terrifies the imperialist holding over this region. Oh, what the fuck that is? Um, oh, the wind is in the way there. Pan African resistance is a part of Third Worldism too. Well, I mean, we've got to look at the way that the society blocks together. It's one of the reasons why Eurasianism seems weird to me because it seems like the complete ignorance of the different blocks of culture. Because you couldn't even, I think Pan Asianism as well is an oppressive formalization of things. It really, you know, it really ignores the different cultural blocks that exist within different parts of the world and our different understandings of it and how much bigger we think Europe is compared to the rest of the world. Because pan-Europeanism is somewhat arguably doable. I mean, it's a little more complicated than that because I mean, you kind of have different blocks that would likely end up forming. Like you'd probably end up getting pan-Celtism, pan-Germanic, and then pan-Latin. Because there is still a weird confliction that occurs within the different cultural blocks, especially when you look at the different oppressive systems. Like pan-Celtism is somewhat that's definitely going to need it to exist as a separate block from a pan-European ordeal. Otherwise, you may be putting the Celts in a situation that is not favorable to them. They need a complete sovereignty over how they organize themselves. Um, so it's much more complicated than a lot of these people who just want to think, yep, Eurasianism. They just want to smack everyone together. You can't operate like that. Islamic Republic of Europe 2025, inshallah. Great replacement on steroids. Pan-Asianism is fine depending on how much you are willing to see Arabs as a part of it. Arabic politics can unite Africa and Asia. The issue is that we fall into the danger of assimilation. That's the contradiction that I'm sort of I'm playing towards, is that how do we avoid assimilation? But yeah, no, I could see that, but I think where you may be coming in with this is thinking a bit far ahead in the future, because we got to deal with how capitalism has separated us all and come to a greater destruction of this class system. Um, Sorry, we've got to come to destroy this class system so that when we come to unite, we don't just assimilate and destroy each other's culture. Because eventually the world is going to work together and branch together, but it's not going to happen on this it's not going to happen on this ploy front. No, but it can cause assimilation. Like the issue that we have when we start merging massive blocks together is what can come what can come from it. Like what's going to dominate? Is anyone going to take cultural hegemony over others? That's why class society needs to be obliterated before any of this can be put on the table. So long as class exists, someone will try and overthrow someone else. Someone will try and get something more out of it than someone else. Um, I mean, fuck, the Soviet Union eliminated the bourgeoisie, but because the labor aristocracy still existed, they still behaved like this. So we know that it's not even just as simple of not eliminate the capitalists. There's an issue of class itself that causes this oppressive tendencies. And once class is eliminated, yeah, sure. I mean, it'd be the world coming together. We'd all stand together, and we'd all not worry about assimilation. We'd all know that we can separately govern ourselves via direct democracy, because the worry of class oppressing another class is dispelled. We're more bothered about sorting out and playing with each other. But until that, you do need them cultural blocks of people to defend. Celtic pan-Celtism, pan-Africanism, pan-Arabism, and all these sort of things. They help defend the bloc. But no, yeah, I agree that Arabia would be the likely place to unite Africa and Asia together. Of course, it's just the problem that we have. Is that Asia is home to imperialist powers. This is the thing people forget when they look at Asia. They think of, oh, Europe is just the only oppressing nation in the world, area of the world, and that Asia is just an oppressed sector of society. Well, China has had a history of colonialism for a good fucking 2,000 years now. Um, doesn't matter. You're not gonna stop assimilation if you don't remove class, motherfucker. No matter what the fuck you call yourself. You know, Asia itself is home to imperialist powers. Russia is technically a European nation, but they occupy half of their nation is occupied Asian territories of nationalities that are not even Russian. But the nations like China are imperialist nations themselves, and we got to be careful of how we push society forward. Because that nation developed out of a nation that had revolted into a socialist one. Now, that's one of the things that makes it a bit terrifying. I imagine, especially for the Arab people, who it's like, yeah, they'd happily align with all these different groups and bring together this society moving forward. But when they've seen this society waving this red flag turn into an oppressor already, one that's siding with Israel, mind those that are gonna get their knickers in a twist. That I'm daring criticizing the almighty Chinese communist empire, but the what's it? When they've seen this empire form out of this nation that touts itself as an anti-imperialist revolutionary society, that's gonna make them very titchy about coming together with these people, and I'd be very titchy myself. It's the same with Europe. It's like trying to bring Europe and Asia together. Absolutely noble idea. Not something that we can just slap together right now. The amount of blood that we've soaked these parts of the world with, for us to think that we could just waltz on in and like nothing fucking happened, and have this fucking happy days come together system. It's not going to be that simple. We've got to make it up to the people we have fucked over before we can ever get there. China is guilty of neocolonialism, colonialism, imperialism, and Eurasianism. Indeed, indeed, indeed. I mean, what's it? They want to be the white guys of the East. They're doing what the Japanese were doing, but I mean the Chinese have been doing it for a long time as well, and they got a lot of this from the British as well. I mean, people seem to forget how a lot of these colonialist tendencies gone about. I alluded to it with the way the Normans spread Romanism, and so did the Vikings, where through pillaging, through oppression, these things expand on. I mean, the Romans were the first installment on the Chinese themselves. The Chinese picked up from the Romans good almost 2,000 years ago a lot of colonial ways to operate. So did the Mongolians, so did the Rus, so did all these people learnt from some form of Romanism, some way, shape or form. China learnt a lot earlier than a lot of these other groups. There's several different warlord groups. I mean, calling it just China is a very, I just sound a bit somewhat ignorant when I'm saying that. I do understand that there are 53 different fucking nationalities or more represented in there, but this block, this region has had colonial contradictions, and the Han haven't been the most oppressive one for the entire time, but they are the current dominant colonial force within China today. They've had this colonial contradiction for a long time. Then British imperialism comes in. British imperialism massacres their people, plants them all on opium, puts certain people in a higher position of control, occupies an island next to them so that they can keep regional control. This was one of the few experiments that the British did with neocolonialism that ended up being kind of funny, that you didn't see Britain adopt neocolonialism further on. Now, it's not quite along the line of neocolonialism proper, because they're still using a governorship through Hong Kong, but they were using comprador bourgeoisie more at this point. This was Britain starting to evolve more into the imperialist model that they couldn't properly adopt, because of people like Churchill standing against it, and eventually you saw the British Empire collapse through its Great Depression, which is the machination of the British Empire's contradictions. But Britain come in, Britain massacred the Chinese people, planted them on opium. There was 2 separate wars in which this occurred, and then manipulated China for comprador bourgeoisie. The imperialist tactics of China that you see today, a lot of that was learned during this era of imperialist of imperialist aggression from the British, and obviously, of course, China has the books of Lenin on imperialism, the high stage capitalism, of which Lenin actually points out how the model of which one takes for an imperialist platform, workshop of the world. And what has China quite literally made itself to boost its imperialist platform? Workshop of the world. The Americans did the same. The British did the same. Be the manufacturing center of society and getting all that juicy capital, and then you can start pushing it into Africa, and China is now the dominant capital influencer of the region. But nah, they're not imperialist. It's all just they're being nice. They're being nice. That's why we had the case recently of the Chinese capitalist whipping someone in Africa, whipping his workers. I mean, he might as well call the fucking disparate the dichotomy of that relationship of what it is. It's the slave. They're treating them like slaves. So socialists, yeah, definitely.
However, there is an innate essence to man which makes mankind cling on to religion. This is what Marx failed to grasp, and in my opinion, this is what Bakunin failed to grasp. Even in a communist utopia, and I use the word utopia in a more colloquial sense because I know Marx and Bakunin were anti-utopian, but in this communist, ideal world where everyone is flourishing to the maximum, you're still going to have a degree of misery that cannot be fully extinguished. This is what existentialist philosophy touches on, Sartre, Heidegger, etc. This is what Niels Joren talks about in his brilliant writings. There is a sort of, finity, finite nature to existence that makes us miserable, that makes us feel incomplete. And irrespective of material conditions, that is a...
These people always have such a Nietzschean way of looking at it. Makes us all miserable. That's why we all have to cling on to this, because we're all just miserable. If anyone ever considered that it might just be because it's a very emboldening and an important part of these people's culture, it's an essence to them, and it's not just because their lives are miserable. Because think about it. Have we really spent more of our existence in misery than we have in joy or in rejoice? I know where it's going, but I gotta make the points on this point. It's sort of, there is this semblance where people think that the drive is it comes from a negative point of view, and if anything, it comes more so from a sense of spirit, a sense of hardship. Um, uh, the issue is that our perspective is poisoned by the modern day environment. Everyone is looking at things from either one or two perspectives. Either they live in capitalist realism and they're not looking at things straight, and their world is a bubbly world of rainbows compared to everyone else's because they're drowning themselves in capitalist the capitalist society is a functional and realistic system. And then you have those that exist within actual fucking reality where life is miserable, so their only interaction with religion is misery. Those who live in capitalist realism are alienated, so a lot of their shit is driven from a weird sense of disconnect, which would cause misery. So the world is a miserable fucking place at the moment. We need an analysis on what's it the we need an analysis around a time where misery is not the major driving force of existence, when people aren't living in a miserable state of being, because I think that would greater expand the point that you are catching on to here.
Part of the human condition, and it will always exist. And as long as it exists, faith in God will also persist. Even if you have perfect material conditions, you're going to have people that fear death. You're going to have people who are, dealing with struggles in life that are just irreversible. That's what Nietzsche talks about. I'm not a big fan of Nietzsche, but he regards life as intrinsically, rooted in struggle. And to an extent, he's correct. We can mitigate those struggles as much as possible. And the problem with Nietzsche is that he didn't support the policies and the actions that would mitigate that suffering as much as possible. But that suffering is a part of life. The condition of death, the condition of watching your loved ones die away. This idea that, you have all these abstract qualities like love, the ability to feel compassion that are limitless in their nature, and yet you're confined to these limited material grounds. The fact that you're merely an automaton in the development of the universe, in the development of humanity, that you're eventually going to wither away as time passes into insignificance. I don't want to sound like some Rick and Morty high IQ type nerd, but that is tough to grasp. That is hard to tackle. And you have to acknowledge this. To many people, this is suffering. Now, to some people, death is something that they embrace because their life is so plagued with misery. But even to those people,
I feel that.
religion has this sort of virtue to it. It has this sort of value. It's essentially.
I mean, here's the thing. I like the point on Nietzsche, because I think a lot of people miss this, because people they don't like will use Nietzsche, so they're like, oh, well, Nietzsche's just bad. No. The problem with Nietzsche is that he doesn't go anywhere with it. He makes good critiques, and then he doesn't know the solution. It's the problem of the trapped aristocrat. The constant sort of important point that I've been laying into this discussion is this trapped aristocrat issue, where these people, they see that there are problems in society around them. The alienation has caused a crack on their skull that's made them to start to see, in essence, the contradictions of society being poised against them. Being poised against the freedom of man, of humanity, for us to express ourselves, for us to be a true being with ourselves. They see the problems, they see the contradictions, they understand lines of struggle and other things like that, but then they stop because they can't seem to find a solution. Sometimes they come close to good ideas, but there's always something about it that's trapped and wrong. I mean, you can even look to Marx and this, that there was a lot of shit that was lost in his analysis that was gained and learned and brought forward in Lenin's analysis, and that was brought forward because of experience that he had going through struggle. Struggle is a very important driving force for our understanding, and if you're not in enough of a struggle, you're not going to be pushed to really come to understand the contradictions of society, and that we need to, put at the tip of our struggle to fight forward. Nietzsche is absolutely correct on struggle, but Nietzsche has no idea what to do. That's why I feel like he has no solutions. Not because he just wants society to fucking suffer and not get anywhere. The guy just has no idea how to do what he wants to do. He's the doomer philosopher. He's the kind of guy who's just like, well, things are fucked. I guess this sort of relates to Feuerbacher a bit, because Feuerbacher did this with religion. It's this Um, it's this fucking I have to go. It sucks. Yes, regrets forever well in that context. So yeah, solidarity. Absolutely. It's great to see that the content has expanded forward. Thank you. Much love to you as well, because um, solidarity to the what's it the multipolar movement and what the struggle of Arizona. And keep yourself safe, my friend. But you're absolutely onto this point with Feuerbacher. Feuerbacher does the same thing with religion. He just looks at it from a, well, there are these contradictions, but he doesn't come to any proper solution out of it. He just talks a lot of fucking smoke, or otherwise. They don't see the full contradiction. They don't see the full issue. They only see part of it because of their blindness. And when it comes to finding a solution, they're stumped. Marx made a good criticism of them, that they're stuck way too much in this, if I criticize it enough, it will just go away. Well, criticism cannot work without explanation. Otherwise, you're just throwing fucking shit out your ass. Well, not all the time. I mean, sometimes criticism is the explanation itself, but you know what I mean. Like, when someone is just off the plate and doesn't have the full analysis put into it, it's not breaking the essence of Wagwan down.
Actually, this conundrum where you can improve material conditions and you can make people's material lives significantly better, help them build real positive relationships through unalienated labor, through their species being realized through a shared consciousness, unencumbered by hierarchical repression. You can do that, but that'll only make them cling onto life more and make death even scarier, and the idea of this finite nature of your life even scarier. And in the flip side, you can make life miserable and suffering, and you're gonna be more likely to embrace death, but you're also gonna be clinging onto religion to mitigate the suffering of that life. So it's like religious institutions and God are just inextricably linked to the human condition, and they cannot be escaped. That's my primary critique and disagreement with Marx. They cannot be escaped. Now, I've noticed a lot of people misrepresent Marx's position. And they think that, Marx is simply saying that, as wealth in abundance is produced, as long as you have more fair wealth distribution, as long as there's material abundance and prosperity for everyone, religion will diminish. That is not quite what Marx is saying. So a lot of people think that Marx has been rebuked by the fact that wealthy people have a proclivity towards religion, many wealthy people. Even in Norway, there's some wealthy people living a luxurious lifestyle who believe in God. People think that debunks Marx. And that's the fundamental misunderstanding of Marx. Marx is not a vulgar materialist. Marx understood that what reinforced capitalism was not the bourgeoisie. It was a cultural apparatus that was produced by inescapable material conditions that reinforced the activity of.
Okay, so this is one of the things where I really did want to come in. One of the main driving points as to why I wanted to talk about this. So this is where Gramsci really expands the narrative. The cultural hegemony. So yes, the cultural apparatus is what reinforces the capitalist society, and bourgeoisie are not the people who operate the cultural apparatus. Cultural apparatus is operated by the labor aristocracy. From, the people who are the society best tries to look to represent as its main block. I mean, it's phenomenal because the labor aristocracy being the massively bought off and intrinsically tied to imperialist side of society. But then you also go into the higher sections of the aristocracy. You've got the TV, the media, the all these celebrities and all this shit like that. These people control the narrative and the medium on what is right and what is wrong within society, and you see them being used as a manipulator to drive who's the leader of society, how we discuss and operate on social media, what is the right sense of etiquette when talking and criticizing on the political front, etc. I mean, America is the perfect example of where we've seen this. Look at the way that the Democrats have manipulated the social media and the celebrities on social media to defend the rise of fascism through the Democrat Party from Joe Biden. I mean, Joe Biden went and did loads of Trump stunts to try and up his popularity as well. there was a massive push for diddly 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 dum. There's a massive push from the cultural hegemony to push Biden into power because they want to protect imperial interests. Um, the reemergence of Syrian gas attacks come from the labor aristocracy again. They brought it all again around Joe Biden's presidency. That didn't come from the capitalist mouths, and I mean, the original I come from the agents of capital. I mean, the political class, but I mean, the political class, you could argue a lot of them are petit bourgeois, which is the upper section of the aristocracy. Um, but the lie come from the bourgeoisie, but the reemergence of it last year and this year come from the aristocracy and their mouthpiece because they want imperial interests to expand because that gives a greater sense of peace in the first world. The fucking 1984 was certainly not describing what it thought it was describing. War is peace, freedom is strength. War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. That is certainly a descriptor for the way that the first world tries to operate. As much ignorance as they can have of the atrocities of the world around us, the genocide in Palestine, the genocide in Yemen, the genocides all across Africa, the genocides all across Asia that are caused by colonial superpowers, they will call their plight of global freedom comes with the ignition of slavery and the enslavement of the world in general through imperialist means, but I mean quite literally the reignition of slavery. I mean, if we look to Libya, and then war is peace. How do they keep peace in the first world? They start new wars. They create a new direction, whether it be Afghanistan, the twice that we've been in Iraq, the fucking the Vietnam, the Syrian war, the Libyan war, the Somalian conflicts that we keep reigniting every fucking 10 years. Our occupation, the British occupation of Ireland and the war there. They always drive this essency that so long as imperialism is expanding, everything's on the call. It's as soon as things get in the way of imperialism's capacity to expand, or as soon as war becomes so drastic that they're the ones that they have to then go sign up and take a gun, that they have a problem with war. But as so long as they can have their ignorance, which guarantees their strength. So I mean, so long as poor people are willing to go and die for them, war will be the guarantee of their peace. So yeah, no, fucking can't remember where I was going with this.
Of the wealthy and the proletariat, the petty bourgeois, the lumpen proletariat, everyone, their actions were rationalized through ideology, through a false consciousness that derived from inescapable material conditions that stemmed from the negation of the feudal order. So what Marx...
Well, I mean, religiosity goes back a lot further than feudalism. It goes back further than slave society. It goes back further than class society. I think I'd argue that corruptions that come from the era of feudalism would be the better way of putting it, but it actually was the biggest corruption to religion that we know about in recent time would be it was initially slave society, but we see the big one that ends up standing out to people, which would be the Romanism. That occurred during the early steps of capitalism, Roman mercantilism, and early Roman capitalism. I think people do forget that Rome collapsed because it couldn't handle the contradictions of being of early capitalism, because it couldn't properly formalize a complete proletariat. Yes, proletarians existed, but the functional proletariat was very hard to organize because, well, why would you get a worker when you can just get slaves? So a lot of Roman lords would just get hold of slaves. They didn't like the idea of having to pay someone a wage and work them like that. They clinged on to slavery. And that's why the next rise of Romanist society still utilized slavery in their development. They followed the plan there, but they tried to make sure that they dropped their slaves at a certain point so they wouldn't fall down that rabbit hole. And that's what these people seem to forget when they look back to this society. Is yes, it did develop capitalism, but it collapsed because slavery was too juicy for the Roman people, and even capitalism can't ignore the illustriality of slavery. And even when it's not directly just doing outright slavery, the starvation wages they pay the third world to build all the shit for the first world certainly is akin to slavery. That's what I find funny as well about the people that like get really defensive over China. It's like, yeah, well, a lot of the starvation wages, stuff like that, and other stuff comes from the U.S. businesses that are operating in there. It's like, well, who sets the fucking rules in their own nation for the U.S. to come in and do this stuff? Is it the U.S.? Is it the Chinese? So who's the communists that are allowing people to abuse their workers? Oh, but they put suicide nets up. Don't worry about it. Fucking bastards.
Marx understood was that being wealthy, having more riches,
Also
that doesn't
known as
suddenly
GLA
make you
workers.
escape alienation, an alienated state. That doesn't suddenly mean you're going to reject God and be happy and flourish and prosper. No. Marx recognized that negating this false consciousness, this vulgar material world where it's endless desire for objects that are going to lose their value in a few hours, this endless desire to accumulate wealth, this false trap that has separated you from your humanity, that has...
I mean, you could look at like Islam's rise to the contradictions of what class society had done to Christianity, because Christianity had started to follow this vulgar materialist path when it started to individualize itself. I mean, one of the first things to point out is with Islam is that it's anti-individualism, just like old Catholicism had. It's you cannot separate the individual from community. Community is a part of what it allows us to even exist as an individual. But I mean, also the anti-elitism, and Christianity had a similar rise when it originally rose up. I mean, the whole point of, it's the whole story of Christ was anti-elitism. But it was the same with the rise of Islam. Is that this the culture around us is elite and centered around the accumulation of wealth rather than the accumulation of knowledge, and is not centered around the well-being of humanity. It's centered around the well-being of a select few in oligarchic fashion. We need to organize for the prosperity of the people. That's why you see in a lot of, throughout Abrahamic faith and a lot of its core original uprising, is that the most important thing is that we've got to make sure that we're looking out for each other and not for oneself. Religion has to be revised to be individualistic when you look at it through its history. It always ends up being revised before it's individualist. And Christianity is the same. A lot of these people that are like, well, Christianity is individualist. Well, no, it wasn't originally. It was revised to be that way. By class society, because it's a manipulatable and usable tool, but it had to be changed to formalize with the development of society at hand. And that's why I'm not a big fan of Protestantism, because Protestantism was something that was an altercation of Catholicism to better manipulate it for the development of capitalism, because of Catholicism's opposition to the overuse of taxes within the organization of the society, and the profligation of wealth, the almost worship of high wealth, when the scriptures, the Bible, even with the Romanized scriptures, you go through the Bible, it still quite much says that a rich man is not going to be entering heaven anytime soon. So there was a sort of fear in regards as to what might dive down into that path. It's a complicated history.
Separated you from your shared consciousness, and it separated you from your capacity to develop all your faculties. That is what reinforces religion. And that's the negation of that order is what is necessary to see the withering away of religion. It's not simply everyone has good material conditions and religion will go away. The bourgeoisie, this is what something Marx makes explicitly clear in Capital, and yet people ignore it. The bourgeoisie are not the primary antagonists. They are an antagonist. They are the order that needs to be overthrown, but their existence is not of their own volition and their own choice. I mean, it's partially their own choice, but it's also because of independent social structures that reinforce their behavior. They cannot escape the market themselves because they are plagued by that external system. That system came to its own fruition through historical development, through the contradictions within the embryo of the feudal order. So simply accumulate. This is what I hate about these vulgar socialists that talk about everyone gets mansions under socialism. You know, everyone is wealthy under socialism. That's not so simple. It's not primarily about material abundance. It's primarily about material abundance in conjunction with a shared collective consciousness that enables you to recognize your full potentialities, that enables you to build better relationships, that enables, sorry if you heard my dog in the background, that enables you to be a superior kind of person. You know, that's what you need to recognize. That's what the vulgar materialists that you often hear, you know, talk about socialism don't recognize. But anyways, that's solely my critique of Marxist theory on religion. I think that is just an inextricable part of the human condition. It's inescapable.
I like the essentially criticizing the fucking the Muppetites and all those shitheads when you think of it, but these people that just think that everyone can enjoy the spoils of colonialism and socialism. Well, that sounds like social imperialism to me. You know, these people, they just don't want to change the apparatus of the social order. They just want this spoiled aristocratic lifestyle for everyone. Everyone can be an aristocrat. The Aristocrats. It needs to be its own fucking show. Someone needs to make it. We can go through like all the different aristocracies of time because they're all been shitheads. But the labor aristocracy, that's where you see a lot of this vulgar materialist behavior, this worship of material abundance, this consumerist mentality in the first world and amongst these supposed Marxists, but you know, fucking what's it? Someone with "does anarchy" in their name seems to be schooling it better on the religious and cultural front than they are. You got to be careful of what you look into when it comes to humanists, though. Humanism is a colonial ideology that's centered around the idea of civilization being centered around intelligence and diddly dum. It's a semblance of. Oh yeah, sorry. Not civilization. Humanity, to be truly human, is based on a certain sense of civilization and intelligence. Fucking terrible in my fucking words. I'm not a retarded Marxist for nothing. But my nose is fucking blocked all the fucking time. Yeah, no, you got to be careful with humanist thought, because a lot of this does prevail from this blocked-in labor aristocratic position, and that's the thing, is that when you see the defense of the system, the capitalist class they just go along with how they go along with. They have to be whipped into motion to do fascism, like they. But everyone thinks, oh, what? But that's when they're doing the most evil stuff. No, they do the evil stuff all the time. Fascism is no different than any other time. People have got their ideas mixed up because of the way that the capitalist society has told you, well, fascism is just when we do all the evil stuff. Okay, then explain, like, all of liberalism when they were genociding half the fucking planet. Like, fascism is not some special, unique thing where all of a sudden they take the gloves off. There's not the capitalists taking their gloves off. People who are starting to whip society into motion are the labor aristocracy, the cultural hegemon of society. They are. Gramsci talks a lot about this. People need to pick it up. The labor aristocracy, the petty bourgeois intellectuals, they're the people who pervade society more than anyone. They have I mean, they get to enjoy it more than anyone. They don't have to be a capital slave and keep becoming the bigger and bigger capitalist all the time. Yes, they live in lavish luxury and all this stuff like that. I'm not denying that. But they don't have to focus on being the bigger businessman all the time, and the suicidal tendencies that actually grows with capitalists when they fail business deals and other stuff like that, because that's the most important part of their life. It genuinely does happen. But what's it? Um, no, they get to enjoy the spoils of society. So when society starts to rupture, they're the ones that jump to its defense. Hitler, Mussolini, Franco, all these faces and figures, they rise up out of the labor aristocracy to whip the system into motion, to stop it from doing as capitalists tend to do, which is drive the system into the ground. I mean, the capitalists even understand this themselves and will put money behind which is the best representative of them through the labor aristocracy. Unfortunately, wealth disparity has caused them to be quite blinded and have gone for these very in-house, upper petty bourgeois members of society like Joe Biden, who aren't as flexible as what they would need for this progression forward. And it's when contradictions like this arise that you get figures like Caleb Boppin rise up in the labor aristocracy, and they will try and push their ideas onto the world with the way that they operate forward. But the labor aristocracy has, as Donna Newman very correctly put it, as an organic necessity to to formalize to organize fascism. It's an organic contradiction of the labor aristocracy. The way that I've always worded it is that class consciousness of the labor aristocracy is to fall behind fascism and protect the capitalist system. It's in their class interests. I mean, when you're a class that's of imperialism, class consciousness alone is not what brings you into revolution with the people. What brings them into revolution is being a class traitor, which does require class consciousness, but it requires to turn against the aristocracy and to turn against your aristocratic position. And to recognize it as well, because you get a lot of them that are just trying to deny they're aristocrats. Yeah, we're looking at you, Americans. But it's not just Americans, it's everyone. But, the labor aristocracy need the people of the labor aristocracy that are in the movement, they need to recognize the position of which they're in and disconnect from it. Otherwise, they are, and they and embrace themselves in the lumpen proletariat and learn from the culture and become a rearguard scholar of the revolution. Otherwise, that their ambition and their restriction into capitalist realist thought and them boxing themselves in such a manner would cause them to be an danger to the movement. I mean, we see this with even some of the great aristocrats that have involved themselves in the movement. I mean, the works of Gonzalo, of Abimael Guzman, are really good writings. The guy even proved a lot in regards to People's War. But he did some atrocities that are absolutely ridiculous, that could only come from someone in the cloud sense of thought of the aristocracy. The shit about blood debts and stuff like that. I know people who would defend Guzman a million times more than me who won't defend that. They'll defend him a million times more than me. I'm not very defensive of him because, of course, I see that these atrocities come from the very big problem that is with people like Guzman. And they are caught up in the contradictions of being labor aristocrats. When the labor aristocracy, or as Gramsci worded it, the petty bourgeois intelligentsia, when they lead the revolution, they doom the revolution. Yep, any labor aristocrat that says they are a leftist, communist, anarchist who won't commit class suicide, I don't and won't trust. Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the Stone Soviet documentary has Jason sort of getting into the contradictions of such, with his lifestyle going from him starting off aristocrat and then falling in and out the lumpen and the proletariat and and after he fell out of being a labor aristocrat, and him having to constantly, as he goes forward, break away from his labor aristocratic culture and his white culture, and, as you say, commit class suicide. He's still in the process of it. I mean, as even us, as even people like myself with proletarian upbringing have had to go through, is breaking away from that aristocratic perspective that's instilled on us from a very young age. Um, but yeah, no, when people have lived all their life in lavish and luxury, and then they can't come and toot in the flag of I'm a communist, I'm a revolutionary. Yeah, no, until you've disconnected from that operative way of functioning, and when we say class society, it's not just, oh well, yeah, the luxuries you get. It's the way of thinking that's the real issue. It's not just, you got all these luxuries about you, which do buy off your way of thinking and mess with how you operate and function. The main core problem is the way of thinking, and you're never gonna change that by thinking I'll just read books about this communist thinker. No, you're gonna change the way that you think for experience. You got to be around the people whose struggle is at the highest of degrees. I mean, I've had a lot of struggle in my life going through life being poor, but it's nothing compared to the people I know I've met through struggle. I need to get in touch with some of the people I was on the street with, and bring them onto this, because um these motherfuckers have got buckets more experience than me. I mean, I was speaking with my mate Mikey the other day, fucking doubling down on the names, eh? But my mate Mikey, we were on the streets together, and he's spent 10 odd years dealing with being on the streets and all that. He's got buckets of experience. These people need to spend time with people like that. Learn from those who've got so much experience and struggle that it's something that you're not going to go down there and just ask them questions and they're going to tell you. It's more of a, you need to befriend these people and be around these people and really get to know the day-to-day struggle. And you know what, as well, go live on the street yourself. Like, go actually survive on the street for a week or a month. Go get an idea of what it's like. Experience is the only pathway to genuine knowledge. If anyone's gonna break away this humanist, this labor aristocratic sense of feeling, it's really dropping yourself to the level of the people that you wanna represent, the level of people like myself. I mean, that's why I try listening to you as much, as well as you being my friend. I hope it's alright. I respect, lad, respect. I mean, it's hard to have time to listen when I fucking ramble so much, but it's the importance of taking heed from those with more experience than oneself. That's why, even though you compare me to an aristocrat, I have experience. I don't like to myself as a good example, because I have nothing compared to most people in my class. I'm only 23. There are people in my class who are in their 40s and have spent as much time on the streets as I have existed in years. So it's and I am but a pea in a sea of fucking pears. So it's yeah, I can speak I can speak to some of the issues here, but I can't speak to the full cream and pudding. Like, I am a mere speck on the window of what you could come to learn from the lumpen proletariat. I and a lot of the stuff that you'll learn from me is not even, a lot of it is not just going to come from my own experience. A lot of it is going to come from the experiences I've learned from the people I've engaged with whilst going through living on the streets, and engaging with the lumpen proletarians of 30, 40, 50 years of age. There's some old biddies when I was on the streets who have been at this for a long time, and I very unfortunately heard and it happened very recently, that the night shelter system I was using, and the daytime food services they're doing. It's all over. It's all ended. It's hello Falcone. The church has lost the capacity to continue helping people by the seams of things. Um, I imagine the council's cut its funding, and that the coronavirus has had an effect, but they're no longer able to help anyone, and it's really, really depressing. There's a lot of really lovely people working together with that program to help people. It's they were the people who put a roof over my head when I was on the streets. Yeah, no.
And one other aspect that I don't quite agree with when it comes to Marx's theory of religion and Feuerbach's theory of religion, I think that you can embrace and acknowledge these human conditions and characteristics of love and compassion and glory. Feuerbach in particular emphasizes love, and that's something I'm very sentimental towards. So I have my own sympathies towards Ludwig Feuerbach, even though I'm not a humanist. But digressing from that,
don't be a humanist.
You can simultaneously acknowledge those are human qualities, or even qualities intrinsic to, different species. If you acknowledge Kropotkin's theory of mutual aid, you can simultaneously embrace that and also believe in religion and a divine being. That's where I disagree with Feuerbach, and by extension, that's where I disagree with Marx. Simply reclaiming those qualities, which I admit have largely been degraded. I think the ego of man has largely been degraded by religious institutions. Even if we are to take back those supreme, amazing qualities from God, many people would continue to believe in God. That's where I disagree with Feuerbach. Because the Greek gods...
I mean, what's it? The ego of man is one of the biggest contradictions of reality. Look at fucking imperialism. Imperialism is the embodiment of the ego of man as it spreads a scourge across the earth. So why do you think that they have that effect on it? That's the thing that I'd add to it. But what's it? It'd be great to have an expansive discussion with you on these issues, Alia. It's great to see you expanding your line of rhetoric into the importance of religiosity, and criticizing Marx through the readings, through the writings. No one's got a candle to hold you on this one. I've seen the comments. Everyone's like, yeah, you actually got a really good point on this. Like, they can't use excuses to hold out of it because you've held the writings straight in there. You've smacked them on the table. You've told them as it is. It's great. Great way to operate in, and it's good to see that you've been bouncing forward. It's not even a bounce back. You've been bouncing forward from the bullshit that you had before. It would be really good to engage with you on this discussion and have a lengthy conversation about the importance of religiosity and how a lot of Marxists miss what religiosity really is, and why it has a semblance of importance to the cultural foundation of any human society on the planet.
For example, take them as an archetype. They were super flawed, to a large extent. They were not asking, in the Greek mythology, they were not degrading man as a sinful, terrible being. And that's partially the problem with Feuerbach and Marx's analysis. They're specifically going through the Hegelian route. They're specifically a product of the conditions of Germany from an ontological perspective, the debates going on in Germany. So they were specifically looking at Christianity when they were engaging in their analysis. But when you look...
they're especially looking at Romanized Christianity as well. I mean, Christianity is not as uniform as a lot of these critics might like to think it is. They center themselves on their personal experiences with Romanized Christianity, a form of Christianity that's centered around individualism and imperialism.
Beyond Christianity, you see the Greek mythos, you see the Roman mythos. Many of these mythos actually empowered many people. Many people thought they were great and virtuous and powerful and all those things and loving. And yet...
Same with Christianity. I mean, Christianity originally rose up on Jesus Christ being a representative of fuck off with your mercantilism. We're doing what is best for us. Similar to the way Islam rose up. I mean, the reason things have degraded as it has is because of the way class society infringes on this understanding of reality, and that its need to manipulate these religions to help drive the oppressive forces of society.
Their gods were often sinful, like Pan in the Greek myths. They were often, violent and aggressive and terrible people. If you read the Greek myths and these legends, So I think that it's compatible. I think you can have a situation where people think they're wonderful, they acknowledge their best qualities, and yet religion persists. Because I think that's just a historically grounded assumption to make. And I think that's the problem with grounding your
Absolutely.
analysis exclusively on the Christian lens when talking about religion. Because it is true that Christianity degrades the self, it engages in this self externalization. You know, this concept of transference, which Freud talked about, where you essentially psychologically externalize these great qualities to external objects. But I think that's just not intrinsic to religion. That would be my last
Not even
criticism of
intrinsic to
Marx's perspective.
Christianity. I mean, I talked
But
about that earlier with with being agnostic, is that there's still this important essence that God represents something that we're all a part of. The earth we stand on is a part of. The universe is a part of. And that's why I say that I have to recognize, yeah, no, there's not something I can say and turn and deny and say, okay, well, it doesn't exist, because even in the semblance of spirit, it still is something that you can argue is an existent quality in which brings humanity together, and is why that we know that we can struggle for a society that is for the greater good of all men and women. Um, so yeah, no. The issue is that individualism has created this separation between the embodiment of how God brings and is a representation of humanity solidified together. I mean, the church is the easiest way to explain this. Like, church isn't the separate buildings. Church is the unified body. It's the house of Lord. Like, everything is intrinsically tied on the semblance of unity and of coming together. Well, the reason why people have come to start understanding church as individual buildings actually comes from a mistake that's made by Christians, not just by non-Christians. And that's because of individualization. It's become that, my church is the most important and is the best and is the best represent. This individualistic chauvinism infected religion as it developed on. Do you rarely hear anyone ever call it a chapel, but that's what it is. The chapels eventually formalize the church, but why is there a term called churches? I mean, obviously there is multiple different blocks of churches, but I mean it's utilized within one church. It's utilized someone will say different churches of the different Catholic churches, as in like talking Roman Catholics, and it's like, well, the different Catholic chapels of the Catholic Church. But individualism has pervaded, and you rarely ever anyone use the word chapel. Um, the I think hospitals are the one place where I think you hear it used the most correctly. But yeah, no, individualism has made an ignorance to what has always been a representative, uniting nature of religion, that very intrinsically pushes this necessity within culture of um, the individual can't prosper if the rest of society doesn't prosper. And it was that part of Christianity that actually drove the original communist movement, what inspired Marx and Engels on the communist side of things, because communism is originally a Christian movement, if people don't know this. The Christian commune movement, hence communism. Um, and this come from that original important line in religiosity of Christianity and Abrahamic faith in general. I mean, Islam actually highlighted this in a larger degree because of the same contradictions that those Christians were seeing, that Christianity had forgotten a very important intrinsic part of its culture, or or to put it proper, class society had deviated it down a line of individualism and self-indulging, self-aggrandization, meritocracy. This society of if you fuck people over enough, you can become better than everyone else, sort of thing. It divulged down this line through slave society, through feudal society, and eventually through capital society, and all these different blocks of all these different cultural phenomena have come to notice the contradiction that class society has laid down onto them, and that's why you saw the communist movement rise out of the Christians, the same bloc that created capitalism. Well, I mean, it's because the perversion of religion by class society was used to defend the creation of capitalism. But Christianity itself had a problem with capitalism, just like Islam did, just like every other religion did, because it's intrinsically a selfish way of organizing society. Now, yes, we saw a lot of these religions tie themselves to feudalism. That's not the whole main block of them. You see different splits. You see those that hold a class, cultural, hegemonic position. They will tie themselves to whatever system is currently at hand because it progenitizes their class power. So it's not a religious motive that's driving it. And then you see the poorer sectors of society, regardless of whether they use religious motives or not, that try and push towards tribal socialist being. That's how the bourgeois mercantile class manipulated the peasants into formalizing capitalism, when the peasants just wanted a society where they weren't lorded over by anyone. And that's what they thought they were getting promised, when it was liberty, fraternity, and I think it was freedom for all. I can't remember. I don't know what the other thing was. It was liberty, fraternity, and something else. It may have been land. But that was not the case. No, the capitalism just come in and wanted to push the the oppressive organization of class further. And this is where you saw a greater push for the perversion of Christianity to be more individualistic, so that those that gain individual prestige and abuse society for their own means profit off of it, and can still conflate themselves as going to heaven, as great people, as moral characters of the world, caring about their legacy and how they're seen, and so that they can be seen as saints and quasi gods. This Romanist idea of being the Julian Kaiser all the time, the Julius Kaiser.
Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope that you took something away from it.
Video.
If you like this, make sure to subscribe.
I love the fucking,
like, of course.
I love the analysis, and what's it? I already have subscribed. I did. If it'll let me scroll, it won't let me scroll. Okay, OBS. Yeah, you're not allowed to scroll on OBS, but I did leave a comment. I'll post a link to this video in the comments down there anyway. But yeah, I should probably pop a link to the channel in the comments as well. Copy. YouTube Studio. Content live. Oh, I didn't put the right. I forgot to change the fucking thumbnail. Oh well. I left the my Fallout 2 stream thumbnail on for the thing, and I only just noticed. Oh well. Please stand by. Okay. So the link to their channel is now in the description, because yeah, I should have done that straight away, but fucking I know what I'm doing. Leave me alone. Should just be awkward and put the video in there as well, just to be a funny fucker about it now. Oh wait, no, that's my video. Copy video, I think. Donk. There we go. Save. And then I copy my stream video. Plop it into here. Paste. did stream.
Hello, everybody.
I actually got a fucking like to my response, and the link didn't delete itself apparently. So there's something there. Oh, my notifications didn't go off for that. What? Weird. Usually your notifications are supposed to ring. What? They're suppressing you. But yeah, no. What's it? You want to go and subscribe to Alia. What's it? As you can tell, the rhetoric from this video was incredibly strong. As much as I had criticisms to be made, I was very fond of what was being said, and the criticism and the very disconnected nature in which a lot of these Marxists look at religion from a very vulgar materialist perspective, even though Marx himself criticized this outlook. And Marx himself was just as much rigid and wrong issues, where he gets caught up in this very imperialistic perspective of religion. So yeah, no, it was an enlightening video that I thought, while I'm in between, because I can't get to A&E until tomorrow because my mom's picking me up to take me. She's at work today, and I don't want to use an ambulance because I had the fun story of having to be on the streets last week because I got kicked out of the hospital for swearing. I was using fuck to pass me words, and then when I went to explain my difficulties with my autism, mind you, I'm dealing with gastrointestinal bleeding, fun stuff. But yeah, no, I thought that while I had the chance in between, because I wagged it a week. I had a week break of dealing with hospitals because they stressed me the fuck out, and then I'm going again tomorrow. So I thought, while I had a chance in between my break, I'd cover this video, but I'm still technically not back. Just breaking in to break face. I should have done somewhat else sooner, but most of this week has been me recapturing my energy, because when I was on the streets, we were having hurricane winds from the 4 hurricanes that have just destroyed fucking half of America. And I had to stand in a telephone box the entire night because the bus shelter I'd found myself sitting at was metal, and well, the winds were incredibly fucking cold, and that metal absorbed the cold and sucked the heat out of me. So I had to go and stand in a telephone box the whole night with my feet still getting fucking frozen to fuck. Because I was thrown out at half 12. Well, my phone was dead, wherever the fuck it is, and the trains were off until the train station didn't open until 9, and the train where I needed to go didn't get there until 22:11. So I stuck with nowhere to sit out in the freezing cold until 9, and then I had to wait until the train would come. I missed my own stop and shit like that, but I had my cassette player with me though, so even though my phone was dead, I could still listen to music. Analog style of listening to music 1, digital style 0. And because I was expecting to go into hospital that night, I had an array of cassettes on me, so I was not limited for my choice in music. Um, but no, I thought I would, while I had the little in between of my escapades of A&E, I had the chance to do something. I wasn't sure whether I was going to be doing another funny criticism of the Chronicles of Caleb Marpin, but no, it ended up because Comrade Netcommon sent me this video of Alia talking about religion and had a lengthy discussion with me about the very interesting points that they're coming on to, and they're starting to become a lot more critical of this the aristocratic foundations of Marxism and the way that this is operated. I liked especially the critique of those socialists that think we're all just going to be wealthy fuckers and rich fuckers in socialism. You know, there was buckets of things that made me think, yep, you know what? Even though I'm still technically not back from my I'm disappearing off for a bit to deal with hospital stuff, I had a break in between because of the contradictions that fell upon me. I thought it'd be a good idea to talk about this because time and time again, as you can tell with the amount of times I've paused and played it and how there's 2 hours and 20 minutes on the runtime right now, is that there was a lot that made me think, yeah, I wanna talk about this. I mean, I struggle with this speaking stuff because I get all nervous and my Asperger just messes me up a bit. I'm really not the best of these speakers, as much as I may be a little more adamant than some of the other members of MRN from the external view. It's just that I try and persevere when I eventually drop myself in the middle of it, and that's how I eventually come on. That's why you'll see me stumble with my words a lot. You should not be ashamed of anxiety or nervousness. It's stuff with generalized anxiety disorder. It's something that's unavoidable in life. You just gotta try and power yourself off of it. But I decided that if I'm gonna fight response and I'm gonna have a discussion about anything, I discuss about this because it comes into a really important thing that me and Luke have been talking about, really getting down to the biscuits on, and that's getting into combating the anti-religious sentiment of Marxism and the very chauvinistic new atheist style thought you see amongst first world Marxists. If Alia has the chance to speak before I disappear off tomorrow, Tuesday, within the GMT hour regions of, I don't fucking know specifically when, because my autism and my fibromyalgia makes me a mess for getting myself ready, and I'm always fucking delayed and offbeat. Or I could say that, oh yeah, I'll be going at 10 a.m. tomorrow, and it'll end up being 1500 GMT that I end up going. But what's it? If you get the chance to have a conversation in the next sort of 12 to 24 hours, I'd be happy to speak with you. It'd be interesting. But other than that, I guess it's time to fucking sign off before I make this too long for anyone to even want to watch. It's amazing how a 22-minute video can get you 2 hours and 22 minutes, or 2 hours and 23 by the time I press end stream. But it was oh, I missed a comment. I need to read this. Reminds me of how people in Spanish, instead of saying Jesus Christ, they started saying King Christ, but in Spanish and such. I see. Either way, I hope you have good luck with your hospital and good health to you. Also, thanks for doing a video despite conditions. I think it's something cool, and yeah, I have limit of right. Yeah, no, respect, lad, respect. Hopefully things go well. Fucking, what's it? I always manage to have some form of bad luck that throws things out of whack, but I always manage to have enough luck that I survive, so that's always the fun part. And the situation that happened made last week helped dispel some of my fears. I know that if I end up on the street, I won't die instantly. I'll be alright. I can still survive it, because I've been much more fucked than I have been in past before. I've been more bedridden than I've ever been in my life. I wasn't sure whether I'd be able to deal with being on the streets in the winter anymore, but fucking hey, turns out I can. I don't know whether there's someone to be fucking proud of anymore or not. Fucking hell, fucking you know, if anything, it's one of those worrying things where it's like, well, yeah, I know that I'm gonna drag myself around like a zombie if I end up in that position again. I do need to have a stream discussion on the experiences of being homeless and what that actually entails, because there's so much to talk about in regards to the way that society makes you really feel when you're homeless, and the difference there is between interacting with other homeless people and everyone else around you, and how you want become like an invisible man, less than human in the eyes of everyone around you. Very very interesting discussion to be had, and I would like it if we could have Lumpen comrades and Fourth World comrades involved in that discussion. People like people like people like Robert and other oppressed Lumpen and Irish comrades, that's certain. But of course, African comrades would be very much delighted to be involved. Native comrades of the world who are under Fourth World oppression. Um, I'd really like to have a wide group together discussion where we can have the experience of homeless lumpens to those who have lived on the reservation, for those who I don't know, and bringing together this wide perspective of the third world and the first world conditions, and what predicates those who are fourth world and third worlders in struggle in the first world, and how the lumpen proletariat brings together people of the first world into the world of these third and fourth worlders. Because I think we can greatly help get people who are trying to commit the class suicide necessary of the labour aristocracy to greater see the empathy we're trying to explain that exists amongst lumpen proletarians of the first world with the third and fourth world people of the first world, and why there's that greater empathy there, and why we're trying to push people to see it, because they keep constantly pushing this propaganda of this selfishness of the lumpen, when you it's very rare that you speak to a lumpen person and they're just on their own. Hell yeah, Robert's down. Whenever you speak with a lumpen person, it's very rare that you see that they're just on their own. They don't know no one. There ain't no one in the lumpen. There's no not knowing anyone. I mean, if they do, they're likely an aristocrat who's fallen into the lumpen. They always know someone else. They're always helping out with someone else. Putting into them, and they're putting into them. Yeah, there are people who abuse people. Of course there are, but there's a class dynamic to the lumpen. We're not just talking about the lumpen proletarian at that point. And obviously you also have the scallywags of the lumpen proletariat who will fucking be little dickheads. But we group together, we come together, and people really need to get rid of this propaganda idea that the lumpen are just self-interested dickheads who are more bothered about their own survival, and it's like nada. We're very much bothered about our own survival, but we understand that we have to work together for that survival. And if we brought together the lumpen voices on this, and the fourth world and the third world voices from the proletariat and the lumpen on this, I think we can get people to understand that there is more compassion in this side of society than there is individualism, and that what they are calling out in the lumpen is a projection of their own individualism. But this has been a very, very interesting discussion and use of my time on this, and I'm very terrible at goodbyes, as you can tell. Very terrible at vocal discussion in general. Like phone calls are something that I incredibly struggle dealing with, because I have to ride on a fight or flight response system, so I always end up either answering them a bit too vigorously and causing trouble, or fighting away from the interaction of it. And it's the same when I get in a discussion. Trying to fucking end the fucking thing is a nightmare. But I'd really like to bring together this inter-lumpen fourth world, third world podcast, essentially, where it's a repeated thing. And actually, yeah, this is where I'd say that the pink, my last stream I did, Pink Purple Girl wants to come together and work with me. Pink Purple Girl, I'd like you to be involved in this as well, because a lumpenized aristocrat who's joined the lumpen proletarian element in society, who has experience in the great struggle against fascism. Bringing someone like that into this, absolutely brilliant, cream of the crop. You know, but we need this dynamic explained to people so that they get rid of this idea of this individualized lumpen proletarian. And I'd very much Valia has the time of the next 20 odd hours. Actually, probably less than that now. 12 hours or so. Wants to have a discussion on these things. Be more than happy to have it. It would be very interesting. I've seen way more individualist and selfish and narcissistic tendencies from the labor aristocracy than from the lumpen proletariat. Absolutely spoken from the mouth of a lumpen brother. And it's because we understand the reality of the situation, and we understand that we need to work together with each other for society to truly progress forward on. And like the worst thing is like when you hear like Mason Snyder does this, for example, but a lot of other Marxists do this, where they think they understand the lumpen and that they know, like, yeah, we know that the radical people in society, but they think that they're going to come down and manhandle them, and then their excuses for it, they'll use the lumpen aristocracy to say that the lumpen proletariat are in some way degenerate, or some way broken, some way need manhandling. And it's the lumpen aristocracy, who shares similar narcissistic, individualistic, selfish tendencies with the labor aristocracy, because they're the labor aristocracy of the lumpen proletariat. Lumpen society is not as streamlined as people want to think, unless people really think the word proletariat is able to label multi-million drug dealers. Does it really? Or even drug dealers that are whacking in hundreds of thousands? Do they not own a semblance of their labor in the same way that a shopkeep, or even big capital, depending on your position within lumpen bourgeois, lumpen aristocrat, etc., etc., etc. These people like to merge these different elements of society together to frame it all as the lumpen proletariat, and they're backing excuses. Well, Marx said it. Well, like me and Robert have separately said in our own ways, is that you know, as much as we're MLM and third worldist, we don't religiously follow the heads, actually. But one of the things that brings mine and Rob's lumpen proletarian positions together is that we both think of the concept of there even being these core 5 heads of Marxism to be sort of scandalous and very individualistic, very worshipy. Save the God-fearing for religion. If you want to be, because it's funny, it's always these religious atheists, the ones who are religiously atheist. You want to be anti-religion, you want to be an atheist, that's what's good. Be a fucking guest. Don't start making something that is supposed to be a science a religion. Because religion even understood that science is something that cannot be rigid. It has to expand. I mean, Islamic mysticism is a great example of this analysis within science being a core part of the way it analyzed and expanded itself out. So, I mean, religion understood it was philosophical and that science needs to be flexible. Well, what Marxism understands is too. It has a philosophical principle, dialectical materialism and historical materialism, and that's the core foundation of how it operates. The science is adaptive and evolutionary because time and space intrinsically evolves and adapts and moves and is a never-ending process of evolution and adaptation, which means the sciences of which we utilize to understand the reality around us must always be evolving and adapting to the fact that reality around us is changing. that these people will dogmatize the understanding of Marxism, and it comes from these labor aristocrats and their selfish perspective of class struggle, and the fact that when they come to the lumpen, they see the lumpen through the friends that they've made. They have a few friends that they'll point to, and they see them as like the good lumpen, and then everyone else is a shithead. They like the people who rely on them. They like to feel like they're a lord to people suffering, someone who combats their ailments. And they do good. A lot of people do like this. They do good things. I'm not shitting on the fact that they do nice things for people, but they see these monetary gifts that they give to people of struggle as like a measure of them being someone who's driving a solution. But these people select and choose who they help. They fuck around. They fuck around and fuck over people who don't fit up to their ascribed understanding of what a decent person is. They have the most liberal and white people perspective on drugs that you could ever imagine. So anyone who's a drug addict, which I find you'll fucking know, most people who are in the lumpen are fucking on drugs. Deal with it. Like, I hate the people that, like, their way of defending it is like, actually, no, not much, no, fuck off. Yes, there are a mass amount of people who are in the lumpen who may not take drugs, sure. That's not the argument. Most people who are lumpen, whether proletariat or aristocrat, are on fucking drugs. Deal with it. Like people shouldn't have to be like, oh, the lumpen are good people, not most of them on drugs. No, if you think drugs are what a good person or a bad person is, you're fucking deluded, and you should stop pretending that you're a communist and just admit you're a fucking liberal. If you genuinely think that drugs have any intrinsicity on what makes someone a good fucking person, fuck off. Because you are a stuck-up aristocrat little prick. I know smackheads that have got a greater fucking understanding of humanity and the will of the people than any of you fucking never touched drugs in my life aristocrat fucks who got no understanding of the struggle that these people go through and why they get so stuck onto the actual literal opium of the masses. While you guys are all stuck bitching about religion, these people have to struggle with some of the hardest, if not the hardest, addictions in life. Dependency addictions, where if you go cold turkey, you can fucking die. Addictions they have to tackle in life. And, when you start picking and choosing who you think is worth your aid based on shit like that, well, you're actually missing the people who need it more than anyone. I mean, if you can handle being lumpen and not have to do fucking drugs, good for fucking you. You should fucking continue struggling the way you are. You probably ain't fucking going through it as hard as the person who's on smack. News to ya. You are probably not going through it. If you're not fucking addicted, you're not going through all that fucking toilment and struggle, you probably aren't doing as bad as the person who's on heroin. Newsflash. So when you start fucking dictatorially insulting these people and picking and choosing and thinking that you're really missing the fucking point. The people who are in the most struggle are the people who are addicted and high on drugs, and bringing people into your homes isn't going to solve their problems. No, we've got to fight for the struggle on an institutional basis of coming together and trying to think that, oh well, no, if I just keep climbing up the progressive ladder of the workforce and get into that labor aristocratic position, I can get the money to help the people. That doesn't work. No. What you end up doing is forming your own 401k, building up your pension, and retiring at the end of your life. You're doing careerism, and that gets us nowhere. No. What we need to do is come together. Even the poorest of people, if we are to come together, we have resources. But all you aristocrats who think that you need to get even higher in the social hierarchy so you can better wield power, no. You just need to come together and put money in a pool. When we come together and we start putting money into a pool and we start putting our resources together, we can do food aid, we can do squatting, even legal squatting, where you acquire the building and you rent it and you make it a place for people to live around that, etc., etc. But squatting, etc., building up this semblance of struggle via providing the needs for these people, rather than dictating over people and just picking certain people that you want to groom into being petty aristocrats. Because that's what happens here. They're grooming people to be petty aristocrats so that the aristocracy can have a greater cultural influence on lumpen people, because they need to control the lower class of society to push their ideas forward. We see people like Mussolini doing this himself. This comes to the organic tendency of labor aristocrats to formalize fascism, whether they think they're fucking doing it or not. They want to organize their ambitions for a projection of them onto the working class. As Gramsci set the lines out straight, we cannot have the petty bourgeoisie, the labor aristocracy, we cannot have them in any power in a revolution. They cannot have any power over it at all. They, especially the leadership, but they should. I expand onto this. They should have no power at all, because when they have power in a revolutionary struggle, they use that power to struggle against it. They use that power to keep cultural hegemony over society and form corrupt societies like the 1950s onwards, USSR and shit like this, where they counter revolt. They form together, because it's not just, they don't need the leadership struggle to counter revolt like that. So long as they have enough power to organize, they can organize. So you need to have complete power over them to proletarianize them, so that worker society is truly worker society and not a chauvinistic society where a few select few start to exploit the rest for their own benefit. Because otherwise we're just hypocrites. We're just formalizing a society that predicates the re-emergence of capitalism, as history has shown that it does. We have seen this happen before. We should learn from our mistakes. And yep, we won't uphold the five heads of MLM as infallible red popes or demagogues. Demigods. Exactly. Because they are merely men and had to learn from experience. Praxis, theory, praxis. Yeah, they don't want to commit class suicide unless it personally benefits them. I've heard a lot of the labor aristocratic left say that. Yeah. What about me? And it's like they miss the fact that they are in the beneficial side of society because they have this self-victimhood. They profligate this idea that they are the victims in the world. And fuck me, I'm in a lumpen position and I'm still not the fucking victim of the world compared to the rest of the world. Fuck me, I'm still in, it's like the top 25 or top 20% of wealth holders in the world. And I still live in an imperialist nation. I may be lumpen, I may be on fucking benefits, but I'm still richer than a lot of people in the fucking world. So it's these aristocrats, they don't have that humility to look to that. In even within their own class structure in the first world, they won't respect their privilege. And then compared to the rest of the world, ignorance is strength. It always reinforces them. War is peace. They preach non-violence. They preach peace in their home country, but they support war across the globe. I mean, one second they're touting that they're anti-war, next second you'll hear them standing behind rhetoric similar to rhetoric of Russia. It's like, oh, we need to do regime change in Russia. I was like, well, do you really? I mean, these people were even turning around and stating that they were stating that China is less of a threat to American capital than Russia, and it's like, this sounds like some fucking straight up Russophobic bollocks. But if we're ready to extend into the poignance of the situation here, these motherfuckers turned around and said that the empire, China, is somehow apparently less of a threat because of some weird sensibility, whilst Russia is just in constant crisis. They got some wacko bullshit to profligate their ideas, but they must always push this constant warring mentality as so much as they try and push themselves as non-violent, and they'll criticize people like the Black Panthers endlessly for taking up arms. It's contradictory. War is peace is a massive part of the way they organize themselves, and the contradiction ends with the final statement, because I as much as Orwell talks a lot of shit, he gets this right with 1984, and freedom of slavery. they have the most amount of freedom in the labor aristocracy to assert themselves. And what do they do with it? They design their own culture. That's why you even see the devolvement of religiosity in their own culture, because they can't sustain religiosity without having constant cultural advancement, and the cultural stagnation is all that they can progress with, because they're assimilating culture, that they're devolving the what is the important essence of culture and its relation to tribe, and are abusing it for the means of expanding the imperial hegemon, the labor aristocracy being the cultural block of the cultural hegemon of imperialist society. But they also envision they envision their freedom as slavery. They think they're the victims within society, and they embody themselves in this, whilst they also then think that they are profligating freedom across the world when they enforce slavery, whether that be the literal slavery of Africans over the last 600 years, or whether it be the slave like wages in which we've profligated over the world over the last what was it, in like 400-500 years of capitalist interaction with the world. This victimhood in the labor aristocracy, as much as it's an extension onto the stream, considering that we're at the end, it does relate to this issue regarding the vulgar materialists and their criticisms of religion. They miss the cultural importance of religion and solely look at religion as just a mechanism. They look at it as just it's a mechanism within class society, and they don't look at how class society has taken a cultural phenomenon and turned it into a mechanism. Because one question I have for these atheists, for these vulgar materialists and these new atheists: what about religion before class? Religion existed before class society. What about religion before class? They're also focused on Christianity, which did rose up during the era of Roman mercantile imperialism. But what about class? What about what about the religion before class? And I really doubt they have a cogent answer other than calling them backwards. It's all that they'll do. They'll go for the colonial rhetoric of just saying, well, those people were backwards and belligerent. Well, were they really? Was seeing the earth as the I guess the Lord of reality, if you really want to use sort of Christian terms, was it really backwards? Was respecting that that we come from the ground, everything comes from the ground, we are a part of the earth around us, so we are intrinsically tied to it, backwards? Because it sounds very materialistic to me. I mean, Engels somewhat gets into this with dialectics on nature. There is a natural affinity for the dialectical order. So when we're to really look at history, we see this all throughout all the different forms of religion. A lot of them rise up as actual struggle. They don't rise up in agreement with the current system. A lot of them rise up in struggle. But you look to the oldest religions, and a lot of them rose up on the struggle to explain the philosophical center of being, and the way that they come to look at it was that we are intrinsically tied to the land around us, and that we therefore should respect it, and one should not cull or oppress or foundate the land in a way that would harm it. This is one of the things that created the massive contradictions and struggle between the Druids of the Celtic tribes in struggle against the Romans, is that the Romans did not have any respect for the land, whilst the Celtic culture was driven on this necessity for respecting where one's land and one's grace comes from. I mean, you even see, the Celts post-Rome, you see a return to this want and being. So within Cymru, Breton, Bretonia, what we can now call England, Cambria, Cumbria, and all those different places, Scotland and the Irish, a lot of these, most of the tribes that formalized after the kicking out of the Romans, these separate tribal groups that formalized in all these regions, because there was loads of different separate Celtic nations that formalized the embodiment of the Celtic people. Uh, Pretty much every one of these nations that formed after the booting out of the Romans labeled themselves along the lines of comrades of the land, friends of the land, common people of the land, family of the land, the people of the lake. Like everything was all centered around we are together and we are an embodiment of the people of this land, and that we have to respect this land again. And you even see this within section tribes too. It was the rise of Romanism though that pushed against this want and being a struggle to push for this more in tune life and society, and the religiosity had an important part of the cultural grounds of this. I mean, when you see the rise of Catholicism amongst the Ethiopian and the Assyrian people, which is where Catholicism actually originates, you see that Catholicism didn't rise up to ever justify Rome. It actually rose up, Christianity rose up to tell Rome to fuck off, get the merchants out of the fucking courts, get them out of the fucking, out of the chapels. Christianity rose up on an anti-mercantile, anti-primitive capitalist basis, because Rome did eventually formalize a primitive capitalist structure. Marx does talk about this, and I cannot remember the fucking book for the life of me. Where's Maxwell Glover when I need him? But Islam rose up on very similar tendencies. Islam rose up on sort of the whole idea of Christianity's failures. I mean, there's a lot more than that, but you saw the rise of Islam in the face of Christianity's indulgence into elitism and individualism, which was against the original line of Christianity and the line of the Abrahamic faith. This constant need to profligate struggle does come from humanity itself, yes, and being not being someone who doesn't believe in a god or anything like that isn't going to deny you from it, because it's a core part of our culture. But religiosity is related and intrinsically tied to that culture. That has been a massive part of religiosity, and why I'd like to have the wider discussion with BRB about jihad and what that means, and how a lot of people mistake what jihad is, because that's an intrinsic sort of message element, sort of outreach of how religion is not as rigid as people might think, but how class society has made us see Christian from this rigid and imperialistic point of view. The national bourgeoisie that joined the Communist Party of China during the anti-imperialist war against Japan later became the capitalist roaders that reverted China back to capitalism and imperialism. Yeah, but I think it comes to also the petty bourgeoisie as well. They were easily manipulatable by these bourgeois elements, because the petty bourgeoisie subconsciously will know that they're going to be on the chopping block class-wise. They're going to have to lose their prestige and their power. And one of the contradictions we saw with both China and the USSR with its development was this hand-holding idea that even Mao himself criticized them for, was this idea that the peasants and the proletariat need to be handheld by the aristocracy. And what that caused was massive contradictions within the development of society, and that's where Mao come to the statement of experience is the only pathway to genuine knowledge in these fields, and that those who are the experienced should be the leaders of these fields, and that those who have the intellectual knowledge should be merely scholars, should merely advise. Unfortunately, Mao didn't practice what he preached in that regard, and if he had actually practiced what he preached, would have made a great improvement in the development of the society at hand there, of the Chinese socialist system. But I mean, there was a lot of contradictions that occurred within China. I mean, the concentration of political power was another one. I mean, you're organizing a commune system, but then you concentrate the power to what was the capital at the time of Mao? It wasn't Beijing, was it? Was it Nanking, or was it the ancient capital? I can never remember with China. I've probably pissed off loads of people. I do apologize, but they centered the political process, which put them in another contradiction. Yep, Islam was a correction of Roman Christianity. Indeed, indeed, and that's why you actually see Oriental Christianity and Islam don't have massive problems with each other. They get along quite fucking well. The Assyrian Christian bloc and the Ethiopian Christian bloc has had strong relationships with Islam, and actually, it was the Ethiopian Christians that defended Muhammad and his disciples, peace be upon him, when he was in struggle. Ethiopia protected Moses as well. Ethiopia has protected loads of people. They protected Jesus Christ when he was on the run from the Romans. I mean, it's the Ethiopians that were the first people to hear Christ speak as Christ. Aristocrat once asked me, why if people loot small businesses during the commie revolution? Like, bruh, there are more important things to worry about during a nationwide civil war. No, come on, man. What about me fucking me? What if those damn commies rob all me fucking chocolate bars? What if I mean, if anything, like the thing that I always say to them anyway is that I don't promote people to loot small businesses. So, their worries are centered around this idea that small businesses are the main prerogative on people's minds when there are fucking massive conglomerate multi-million supermarkets. Communists think a little more than just the periphery. I mean, the organic struggle may cause disparity where people will just loot anything. Yeah, but that happens. But organized and strict struggle, people aren't just going to be one-ton like that. So yeah, you're absolutely right that there's more important to think about during a nationwide civil war. But I think they misunderstand that if the commies are actually fully organizing shit, the contradictions wouldn't be directed at the small businessman. I mean, if anything, knowing that we ain't just gonna zap socialism into tomorrow, we would like to be able to organize as many of these people who hold small businesses to support the struggle, knowing eventually they'd have to dip their capital away, and us, of course, making sure they have no power at all in the movement, not even scholarly capacity to involve themselves because they are holders of capital, but being able to organize amongst these people, and then yeah, they're not going to be looted. They'd be arming people, they'd be supporting people, they'd be helping people. I mean, of course, if they don't, then they're going to become enemies of the struggle. But and then obviously, fuck me, put themselves on the table. They don't understand that an organized struggle is not the same as an unorganized struggle. If communists organized in a discipline, these same aristocrats would then whine about authoritarianism. Absolutely. You know what's the funny thing is they don't catch how a lot of authoritarians, like true authoritarian people that really organize things on a respectful basis, organize. The best authoritarian understands his libertarian their libertarian sides. We got to be libertarian. We got to understand the necessity of liberty, of people's needs for freedom and right in society. But we need a sense of authoritarian structure, authoritarian organization. We need to be strict, disciplined, and organized around ourselves. It's exactly like you say. As soon as there's discipline, you're an authoritarian nightmare. And that's what I find funny about a lot of even communists that are aristocrats. They don't. As soon as you start invoking discipline with an organization, they're completely fucking spooked and they don't want anything to do with it. They don't like the idea of being told when they do something wrong. They don't like the idea of having to be held to a specific standard of behavior. They get their knickers in a twist when you pressurize them like this. But no, absolutely. It was really good to be able to have this discussion on religion regarding what Alia does anarchy has had to say. I like the extra discussions we've been able to evolve out of this. It's been telling, and great to have my interaction with you while I'm still in the middle of my escapades with fucking A&E. And I'd like everyone to obviously subscribe to Alia. The link is in the description for both the channel and the video. Watch this video again in full where I'm not pausing it every 5 fucking minutes. But if you want the breakdown, for those who haven't seen all of this, it's all here in its 3 hour fucking glory. Well, an hour of it has been just me sort of chatting about with yous. But and keep your eye on the ball with this one, because everyone when this person was going by the name Zoomer, everyone was giving this person shit. And this person would just come in and were just throwing their ideas down on the table, and rather than people being like, oh, you come into good thought, but it's this, that, and the other, they just attacked them like they were some sort of moron. They attacked them like they were some sort of gimp. Listen to the words of this person. Listen to the words that this person has had to say throughout this video. They are not a gimp. They are not an idiot. They are smart and they know what they're talking about. They cite in the sources and other shit like that. I'm fucking shit with sources, as some of you may come to fucking notice. So, when people are throwing down and giving shit on this person's throwing the ball in a good mannerism. Yeah, they're probably wrong on a lot of different things, and they're probably right on a lot of different things. How do we deal with that? We break it down and we criticize. I've had my own criticisms to lay down on this, but for all in all, it's been an alright video. Was it's been a while since the Zuma Zanderhol debate, so I forgot about the fucking ridiculous things that Zanderhol has said. But it's sort of, people come to attack Zuma, but Zuma fucking had Zanderhol by the bollocks. Like, say what the fuck you want, but Zanderhol tries to pick out targets that he can bully, and he got treated like a little bitch. The establishment shill that he is. But people need to show respect and solidarity to people like Zuma. They're putting their ideas out there and trying to figure themselves in the world of struggle. Because you know what, like with the name change and all that, it took me a while to find them, and I've wanted to say this for a while. Like, I wanted to come to speak with this person and actually be able to come down and struggle session on some of their ideas. When people get caught in that middle ground of, I like anarchism and I like Maoism, that's normally someone who sees the importance that both of these struggles have come to learn, and both of these struggles need to learn from each other. And I see someone who can be a prosperous Marxist when they start to see the importance of these different struggles, or even just a prosperous socialist. I don't need someone to be a Marxist. Being a socialist is the important component here. I see someone who can be a prosperous comrade when they start to see these parallels, these contradictions within struggle that Marxism, Leninism, and a lot of other socialist ideologies have failed to properly grasp their mind around. I mean, like, we looked to the anarchists. One of the things that really got me caught on with the anarchists in Arizona was their criticisms of the labor aristocrats of anarchism over the last few centuries. I've noticed the labor aristocratic left don't have a problem with authoritarianism only when they are allowed a leadership role and they benefit from it. Yeah, exactly. So long they like it when they get to be the manhandlers. That's why they get spooked by the authoritarian tendencies of African nationalism. They get completely spooked up by black nationalism, because it's not the white labor aristocracy in control anymore. It's lumpen proletarian and proletarian African motherfuckers telling you how it fucking is. And this was going in from west side to east side. This was all over America. That you saw not just Black Panthers, but all forms of different African nationalism rising up. Everyone likes to exclude to the numbers of the Panthers as a representation of the whole movement, when the Panthers were actually only a piece of this massive puddle of what is African, the Pan-African movement, the African struggle, and its embodiment in America, and of course its wider embodiment across the world. Fred Hampton's is an interesting character, because if you look to some of the speeches he said when he talks about the wider third world and its relation to the struggle of black people in America, he landed on some of these issues himself without fully realizing it, in my opinion. And people like Kwame Ture helped expand the narrative on these issues regarding the third and fourth world struggle and how they intrinsically tied together. I think the fundamental personal goal for beginner socialists is to get over the liberal moralism that's been drilled into their heads their whole lives. Yeah, I call it moral individualism. Um, because the issue is that you get another side with the vulgar materialists where they devoid right and wrong because they see it as as stupid as feckless moralism. When there is a semblance of importance to right or wrong, it's understanding that philosophy has to be communal and has to come on a common understanding. So we have to commonly see what the common understandings are for right and wrong, depending on our perspective, our class inference, and where we exist within society. Philosophy would never come to that conclusion if it wasn't an important part of outlook. But it's the same on the other side of the bench. These people are these individualists, moral individualists, where they moralize on a perspective of what benefits them best, and they intrinsically tie that to what is good and what is bad. They get caught up in this. Innate rearing towards imperialism, where they will, Russia is evil, or this country's evil, or that country's evil, because its ability to stagnate and cause constipation of capital, of a US capital, of Western capital, which then causes a stagnation and a deterioration of the aristocratic living conditions within these regions. These people will moralize it. They will moralize it as well. These nations that have stood in the way of the US empire, they might not word it like that, but these nations that stood in the way of the US empire are now therefore evil because they've stepped in the way of the aristocracy having their own means and their own way of being. So it's the way that liberal moralisms are centered around the way the aristocracy sees itself as this individual cultural being, this wiser and better than everyone else that must have. They must have their piece of the pudding because they have so worked hard for it, and you dare step on their toes, you are getting in the way of their hard being and their hard work, when most of them are living off the hard work of their ancestors. And even that is a murky statement at best, because some of the hard work of these people's ancestors is war, genocide, war, slavery, death, and deceit. War, death, disease, slavery, and genocide, and radioactive seas. I can't seem to remember the other word from the lyric. Liberals get so caught up in moral abstractions that they ignore material reality. For example, they shut on Palestinians for being violent, but they ignore the material conditions of Zionist occupation. It's actually one of those funny things that, because these people with their, because they don't, a lot of these people are like these new atheist types as well. They'll think like this. They think from these like moral abstractions of right of being, of them being above everyone else because they have a greater semblance of civilization. Well, when they look at these people, like look to Islam and other religions, well, Islam would turns around, and jihad is something that actually gets into this. That under a point of struggle, being violent in your struggle is not a immoral act. So these people that will use morals to attack the Palestinians is an absolute perfect example that you've pulled up there, because communal moral understanding has always come to the point that if you're under attack, you fucking fight back. Only individualism could turn around and call self-defense an immoral act. And like you said, it's because of their abstractive way of looking at morality. They look at morality on a meter of what affects their civil liberties the most. And because Israel is a representation of British and American colonialism in the Middle East, anything under attack of that is an attack on their Western principles, their Western colonial understanding of the world. So they must moralize that is evil, but Catholicism, Judaism, and Islam all come to agree that if you're being fucking murdered, take an arm and fight. New atheists argue that morality is subjective when up against religion, but for geopolitical analysis, they appeal to liberal humanism as objective truth. They have not truly rejected deities. Absolutely, that's probably the best way I could ever fucking word it. Sorry, if I've ever seen it being worded. Um, Fucking English. You're absolutely correct. They will treat morality as just as innately just a subjective issue when they're criticizing religion, missing that morality has always been seen as something that is subjective in our capacity to learn it, sure, but the only reason it's ever been so rigid is because of principle, and that's a difference that's missing from these people who utilize humanism as their perspective for uh, uh, morality, is that they don't have a principle to it. They're not principled in what's right and wrong. They just see right and wrong based on what suits their principles as an aristocrat. There's no middle ground on principle. So the principles that they hold dear to is what better profligates their individual benefit within society, their ordeal, and that's what brings them together as a class. Their class interests is to profligate a capitalist society so that they can better profit their class interests. And yeah, like say when it comes to their analysis of imperialism, they throw down, they come at it with this very humanistic understanding of morality, where um, morals are tied to this understanding of civilization and this understanding of colonialism, the white man morality, I guess you could call it. I think I've heard African people in America call it white people morality, but I may be mistaken of a conversation of a different caliber because it's vague in my mind. But white people morality, that's what that sounds like to me. Is this semblance where colonialism dictates and drives the way morality sees itself and moves itself forward. And as I reattempt an end of conversation, but will probably get distracted and rambling about someone else because I'm a ramblestani. This actually reties itself again into sort of my two pennies worth in on this discussion of religion, is that I'd argue that it's not about development in society itself that is taking people away from religion. I argue that it is alienation. Fucking flies. Alienation in society that drives people down away from their culture. I mean, people move to and from religion all the time because of all sorts of different reasons, and sure, I imagine material conditions can have an effect on that. But the what's it? I'd argue that the main driving force for this disconnect from religion within first world society would be alienation, and would be some of the me and Max have talked about before, where because of the way imperialism creates this ignorance of the family of society, what we call nation today, but what is for most of time been seen as tribe. And tribe is not what a lot of these humanist figures will try and make the term out to mean. It does not mean backward society. Tribe is the original and true essence of nation beyond nation state. And imperialist development in society, as we've seen in the past with Greece and Rome, and we've seen today with our own societies, creates a poison that pulls us away from tribe, that disconnects us from our true embodiment of culture. And this drive away from culture will drive us away from religiosity. And it drives this assimilative mindset within society where people want to impose their will over all these different cultures that differentiate from them, and adopt and adopt and steal what they can from them that they want, and then obliterate what's left of them. I mean, we see this in Zionist colonialism. They will take and steal from the Jewish, Muslim and Christian Palestinians. They'll steal their culture all day long, whilst they massacre and murder even the oldest tribe of the 12 tribes that moved to Israel, the tribe of Joseph, the Sardonians, So there's so much rich history to dive into in this discussion, that I wish I wasn't fucking what's it in the need to get myself prepared and ready to go to A&E tomorrow, because I fucking love to talk all year long about these historical intricacies and the way that imperialism comes to affecting them. But it's certainly a conversation to have forward with third world, fourth world, and lumpen people at the helm of discussion, because there is a wider bank of cultural influence to really discuss about, that many of these different groups could definitely probably apply their perspective in. I think the easiest one to get us sorted out would be getting the discussion with BRB on the importance of jihad to Islam's struggle and other things like that. Example, white people who fetishize East Asian discipline and intelligence but betrayed East Asians once COVID happened. I'm exactly. I mean, that's the argument that you see from people like the British nationalists, the old British Nationalist Party members who've like Nick Griffin, the old leader of that party, who fetishizes China as the new Mussolini and other things like that. Um, and they have this similar idea. They fetishize on these stereotypes. It's one of the things that always scares me about the Eurasian stuff. It's like it'd be nice for us all to come together, but it's like the people that profligate this stuff are the type of people who propagate they profligate the fetishizations that you're putting forward to me right now, Specky. They have this very stereotypical understanding of the East, that that their Eurasianism is only going to end up turning into either Europe dominates or Asia dominates, or the dominative powers of Western Europe dominates Eastern Europe, just like the northeastern elements of Asia dominate the southern elements of Asia. Well, Asia's a little more split and harder to remain like that, because obviously Eastern Russia is oppressed Asian region. It's hard to point out, but you know what I'm getting at in that regard. Like, colonialism is way too much of a contradiction on both sides of the fence, and either side wants to lick either side's ass in regard about it. I mean, European fetishism is a problem that does occur in the East as well. I mean, the Indian communists have a lot of criticism when it comes to Eastern Westernism, and how that infects the contradictions. Because I mean, a lot of people who are anti-communist will call communism a Western-only idea, and there's something that they criticize because they see that the largest advancements in communism come from Eastern thinkers. They broke the Eurocentrism of Marxism. That's what Maoism really represents. That's why I don't like the people that are like, oh, well, Gonzalo, he was the guy who made Maoism. No, he's one of the guys who helped synthesize it. And even Gonzalo, when he wasn't sucking up to the fucking people licking his ass clean and indulging in his cult of hegemony, even Gonzalo would recognize that, he wasn't the only thinker. He wasn't the only guy who formalized Maoism. Maoism was synthesized by Sisu, by Gonzalo, and I can never remember the name of the Indian thinker. I wish Falcone was here to tell me. I'm very bad with names, but it was a conglomerative formalization that come from the works of Lin Biao and the Black Panther Party, because these things are not just simple-minded, like in one guy come up with anything, and a lot of this shit come from the struggle of the East, the South, and etc. to that. It was never from this northern Western Europe. It was never from the Northeast. The Northeast was not not never from the Northeast. The Northeast, wasn't the main conglomerative block of this. When you see these big blocks rise up, I mean, like a good example, like Eastern Europe, Lenin may have been an aristocrat, but Lenin wasn't just purely Russian. Lenin was also Mongolian. Lenin had Jewish heritage as well. Like, you typically see a lot of these big thinkers, they come from these massively oppressed blocks. They're not just the simple white aristocrat of Saxon descent or something. Marx was Jewish. He was a self-hating Jew, but he was still Jewish. All throughout this ideology are all these different thinkers, where we've got to really look at it from the compound nature of, from Marx all the way to Sisu, Gonzalo, and all these other people. People just look from Marx to Mao and they stop there. Yeah, it's very easy to see that there are a lot of white people in that block of people, but Mao was Chinese. He may have come from a beneficial side of China. I don't know whether he was Han or not. I really don't know. but I know he was an aristocrat, and I know he did own the land. His family had capitalist class conditions. He was still come from a more oppressed region of the world. Kim Il Sung, he was fucking lumpen. He was fucking lumpen when he was growing up and when he was in struggle. And he come from Korea, one of the really oppressed centers of Asian society. The Asian societies, sorry, to be assimilative in my language. You see Ho Chi Minh rise up. He may have been of a more aristocratic position. I don't know the history there, but he still rose up. Indo-Chinese, which is the Indo-Chinese people are very heavily oppressed within the Asian region, especially by the European colonial powers when they come on with their caste orders of organizing colonial society. You see this driving force within Marxism to have come from a lot of brown voices. So when you hear these people, as I'm rambling to try and get to my point on, I don't know why I feel the need to use so many fucking examples. I'm having the autism moment where I'm like, fuck, if I don't come out with my list of examples, everyone will fucking call shit on me. A lot of these people that want to think, oh, well, Marx is full of a lot of white thinkers, and a lot of the people that say that more than anyone are Marxists themselves. The problem is and this is where a lot of the black, brown, red, whatever skin, I mean, we're all technically a pigment of red skin color, criticism comes out. It's not that there isn't a lot of non-white voices in Marxism. It's that Marxists tend to not want to listen to non-white voices. So a lot of these voices are ignored. I mean, like, this comes into something that really pissed me off with George Jackson, Marxist.org, which is a Trotsky-led site that shouldn't be trusted. George Jackson, a fucking a sold-out brother, a communist hero, they won't have his works on their page because they see him as a murderer and they don't respect him as a communist. The guy was a true fucking Pantherite. Was a true man of struggle. He spoke like a Gramsciite and wrote like a Gramsciite, and was absolutely wholeheartedly in the struggle. But they don't want him on there because they see him as a murderer. But what the fuck is Trotsky? What the fuck is Trotsky? What the fuck? Butcher of Ukraine? That's quite literally his nickname, Butcher of Ukraine. You're going to have the works of the Butcher of Ukraine on there, but you're not going to have the work of their brother, George Jackson, a guy who lost his life trying to break his brothers out of prison. Lost his life trying to break his brothers out of prison. And has wrote some amazing works that I hope to read to people on here as soon as I've actually mustered the fucking energy to read some Gramsci to you motherfuckers and get that down people's throats. Hopefully when I'm out of hospital I'll be able to drop that on the table with people. But it's absolutely sold that brother. The people who reject George Jackson are broken and are deceiving themselves, full of shit to the highest order. And this is why you get a lot of people who are coloured who don't want to, sorry, I don't know whether colour is an offensive word I used there, but who are black, who are brown, who are red, who aren't white people, let's just put it like that, who ain't white people. They get put off from Marxism, not because there isn't black Marxist voice or brown Marxist, but there are plenty of them. It's because the people who scream about Marxism the most, these white folk in Europe and other places like that who scream about Marxism all that than the other, don't respect those black voices, and they don't even properly respect the white voices either. They don't respect shit in Marxism to the proper degree. These people see this liberalism that masquerades itself as Marxism, and even the ones that are taking it seriously, they disregard the black voices and box themselves in this just the five heads bollocks. That's not scientific. That's dogmatic as fuck. You think Lenin fucking learned anything by being like, I'm just gonna follow Marx and no one else? No. You think Marx just followed what he thought of himself because there's no other Marxists for him to follow? No, he looked to the people he criticized and the people he agreed with, and the people he both agreed with and criticized with, because you don't agree with anyone fully. That's how science and philosophy and any discussion on anything ends up flowing and functioning. You're never going to fully agree with everyone. And Marxism sourced itself from the communist movement, a Christian movement, while Marxism has spent a lot of its time being edgily anti-religion. I mean, a lot of Marxists have come to learn the idiocy of that, like Connolly, but the point that I'm sort of rambling and scrambling on is that these people are stuck in an idiom and they're boxed in and boxed up. And I'd very much love to go into the greater contradictions of the ignorance of black Marxists within our struggle, and what that causes for people around the world, and the way in which that they look at our struggles because of this. But I keep getting caught up on fucking new rambling ideas because fucking autism moments with Mike. But this is now definitely, I promise I'm not fucking with you this time, the end. It was great speaking with yous. I'll keep you posted on what happens with the old hospital. Keep yourself safe. Keep yourself positive. Keep yourself away from the coronavirus with Omicron. Fucking sounds like a transformer and it has been evolving, so I guess it's fitting, but the Omicron virus is out there now. Keep safe. Keep strong. That's it. The fucking mic's in the way, but red salute, comrades. And what's it? Stay frosty. Yeah, little fuckers. Adios.